Good. We're hanging in there. How are you doing?
I just moved from my house to my mother-in-law's because my husband is an EMT.
Oh,
So we're like good, but
that,
it's a little uprooted as everyone
right.
is. Yeah. So this is my new office as of 5 minutes ago.
Oh, well, that's probably a good decision, though.
Yeah, I think it's important to just make sure everybody is safest. And I'm asthmatic, so it's just like getting away from extra exposure while the hospitals are full.
Right.
We're in New York City, so it's the kind of the peak place for the.
Right. That's why I was wondering how you're doing out there.
Yeah, it's been shut down for a couple weeks, so it's just a new reality. I have a 3-year-old, so she's loving the time home, but I think it's a lot to be, not at school for her, I'm sure. Lisa, you're a school educator, right? Or what are you?
Yes, that's why I had tried to send you a message that I'm online from 9 to
I
12.
saw that. Don't worry about that at all.
So I'm checking messages, and I was going to actually ask you, I need to video myself
Sure.
doing some short clips, and I'm trying to figure out the best way or way.
During this workshop,
No,
okay.
no, but I mean, after we do it, maybe I'll use some short things from here. Would be great. I'm just trying to figure out the best way to use, like YouTube, to use. I don't know how to do this. I never really did it remotely, and then
For
I
your
made
students? Is it for your students?
it for my students, and
Uh,
then might do a Zoom with.
so if you want participation and back and forth, you should do Zoom,
Okay.
as we can do this. But if you want to broadcast, the best way is YouTube, because on Zoom you have to take the video and somehow put it somewhere. So you can upgrade for $15 a month, which is very cheap, but they only have 1 GB of storage. So then you have to download the file, upload it somewhere. I find if you don't need interaction, YouTube is the best. And if you want interaction, Zoom is good. And what you can do is do shorter videos if you need to upload it somehow or save it. If it's just live and you don't need to save it, Zoom
Right.
would be fine too, and you wouldn't even need to upgrade.
So if I Zoom with all my kindergarten and first graders, that would be like 250 kids. Would I mute them all?
You have to upgrade.
So would I mute them so that they can't talk?
Everybody, exactly. Yep.
So, yeah, that's what I was trying to figure out, if I need to upgrade, or I might just do some mini lessons, and I'm trying to send out some video clips because the parents are saying the kids are doing like little videos if I send them, or just.
So if you look at my YouTube channel, I just started it like last week. I put a bunch of short videos up for my students. And then I did public videos. So if you do a video and you make it unlisted or
Yeah.
private, if you make it unlisted, you just send the link out and no one can search for it. They can only have it if they, it's pretty easy.
Maybe that's what I didn't know if I should do it unlisted or public.
You should do unlisted if you want it to be unsearchable.
Okay.
And then you can do public if you want other random kids to be able to watch.
Now, is there anything that you have that can I send anything of yours to students or
My
not?
YouTube channel to them. Yeah, there's classes on there.
Okay.
All the things marked for children are under the folder children and families. So it's really easy. I'll send that to you when we're done.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure it was okay if I sent.
Yep, 100%. Everything that's not to be shared, I keep private or unlisted, so you wouldn't even be able to find it. So if you find it on my channel, you're welcome to share it.
Okay, perfect.
So I'm not sure where. I'm just going to send out one more invite to the other person's name is Yuhong, which she goes by Catherine.
Okay.
She took my training like 5 years ago, and she's actually a mindfulness teacher already. Just send this to her. She also has kids, so I'm not sure if she's having. It's gonna take a minute to get there. Okay, I re-invited her. Oh, no, I can't find the Zoom box. Where are you guys? Okay, there you are. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about how today will go, and then we can kind of chat about like our application. So this is going to be part lecture, part experiential, part storytelling, and then You'll also get opportunities to kind of like try things out, and I'll give us a couple breaks throughout where you can actually practice the mindful hand washing. And oh, do we have her? No, we're three. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So basically, this content was made for K-5, but it is really, the workshops I've been doing have been like, how do we apply them now in like virtually as well as in our own homes? So the content is also like, it can give you your own daily practice. It is written so that children can do all the activities, but it's not just helpful to kids. So in the school districts I was working in before we closed up, those teachers were adopting it as a personal care practice first. So I kind of think that's what all of our practices end up becoming. It's like what works for us, and then how do we adapt that for the kids? So that's what the workshop's like. I will send you recordings of it when we're done. It might take a day or two because I have to download it and upload it. But I'll send you private links so you can access it, but people won't be able to see or hear your conversation with me because it won't be listed. So they can't find it, but you'll be able to see it on YouTube. And then throughout the time, if you have questions, obviously it's just going to be you two and this other person. So it's wide open. So that's how it's going to go. And then basically my goals are just to help, and I'm sure you both kind of have daily practices already. Some people come into this with zero self-care, zero practice. So my goal is, maybe to help you deepen that or look at it from a new angle now that we're sort of stuck in one place for an indefinite amount of time. So those care rituals have to change with everything else. And also as our lives change, right, we don't do the same practice throughout every phase of our lives. So just re-examining, and obviously you don't have to do everything in here for yourself. Like they're great for kids, but to continue to use other resources like great teachers. I've been listening to Insight Timer and Tara Brock, and so we can continue to use outside resources as well. I just wanted to provide something pretty substantial for you in terms of curriculum that you can directly apply in schools. Lisa, are you what grade level do you work with?
Right now it's K-3.
Okay. And your job is the school yoga teacher?
I am doing social emotional learning using the second step curriculum.
Oh, I used to do second step at my preschool when I was.
They kind of made it into a special where I do second step. I do some mindfulness or a breath and some poses. So I kind of integrate it however I can make it work right now. I don't have anyone helping me, so I've had to do this. It's been 4 years. We started this a few years ago, but I kind of had to do it on my own at the time. So I really didn't have anything like this. So this helped to me.
That's what happens when you're a pioneer. I'm just going to quickly check if she messaged me. I don't see anything from her here, so.
Oh, we see her.
She's here?
Yeah, we can see her.
I don't see her. Wait, Catherine? Yuhong? Are you here?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know you were here. I can't, my screen isn't showing you. Okay, there you are. Hi. Oh, I'm so glad to see you. For some reason, my screen was just looking at Lisa and Ava. Okay, so that's Lisa's intro. Catherine, how do you want us to call you, and also tell us a little bit about your work next?
You can call me Catherine, and my Chinese name is Yuhong, Yuhong. I think I first started with myself, practice yoga, love yoga, and a couple years ago I took Laura's kids yoga training. That's really helped me not only deepen my work, but also really helped me to open my eyes what age group I really want to work for. And for now, I'm a Mandarin teacher. At the same time, I teach kids yoga and mindfulness at my daughter's school, like basically pre-K elementary. But I'm a Mandarin teacher. Like that's my first career start. But I really enjoy teaching mindfulness and yoga. It really helped me center myself, especially during the pandemic. And I feel like this is a tool for everybody, not only for kids, for educators, counselors, or caregivers. I think it's good for everybody. And I'm so glad that I can be here and to learn and to grow. Laura is a wonderful teacher. I'm really grateful that I could learn more with you. Yeah,
Thank
I'm
you.
very happy.
I'm so happy you're here too. Then we have Ava. I'm gonna tell
I
your work and your goals and what you're studying.
mean, I don't do much. I'm in school for education and psych, but I did do I don't know what the lesson plan packet was called, but I used it in the summer at the daycare that I work at. The Yamas and Niyamas one. Yeah, I did that with the kids. And they liked that. And hopefully I can do it in Providence. I taught the kids in Providence Zumba this year though, because I'm certified in that too. And they like that.
For education, what are you doing? Elementary ed?
It's 1st to 6th, so yeah.
Okay. So we've kind of got elementary throughout. So that's good. That the original target of the content was K through 5, but I had it reviewed by a gym teacher who's a middle school gym teacher with a master's in mindfulness. And he said that this is absolutely applicable for older children. It's just you would ask them deeper self-reflection questions. So, and my specialty is actually early childhood, sort of 0 to 5. I've worked a lot with elementary as well. But I'll say that you can adapt this down very easily too. So just remembering as we go that it's written a certain way, but it doesn't mean that you have to do it exactly that way. And I'm sure Ava, like as you were doing the Yamas and Niyamas content, you were like, oh, I'm going to do this, skip this, change this. Yeah. So always the curriculum is sort of like a foundation and a backdrop. And I'm sure that's Lisa, as you do second step, I'm sure you see that too, that you can read the card exactly as it is, or you can extrapolate from the lesson and kind of do your own thing. So I highly recommend bringing yourself into the training today. And as you're doing it, you're like, oh, that's such a great activity. I think I would actually try it this way. When I did this a few weeks ago with about 20 educators, they had so many great ideas, like for kids who were not quite reading yet, what they would do with the cards that had words, or they're like, oh, we can say when it's green or light green, or so we can always change the reference point for kids that are not quite reading. Most of it, as you can see with the illustrations, is really sort of decipherable without words. And I think that's kind of how kids do the yoga cards too. I'm sure you've seen that, Lisa, that if you put out yoga cards for kids that are not quite reading, they focus on the pictures.
Right.
And then if you put out yoga cards with words on them for kids that are reading, they'll focus on a combination of the pictures and the words. So I just want to say, like, all valid forms of learning work. I just want to kind of say as well, my viewpoint as a teacher is that everyone participates in their own way. So for you and also for the kids you'll be working with, offering and normalizing a wide range of participation, especially with mindfulness where it might be vulnerable, that you can say, it's okay to just listen. It's okay to just watch. And it's also okay to try this when you're ready. So we never force everyone to do it, and that truly they'll kind of adopt it and take ownership when they are arriving in their own time. Just like all of us, we hate to be forced. Inviting and offering makes people feel safe enough to open. And so it's not a trick. I truly do believe that we give them autonomy and agency, but at the same time, it does lend itself to participation when we say, if you want to try this, go ahead. And if you'd rather just watch, that's okay. So I'm going to toggle between us seeing each other and then sharing my screen. I've got a slideshow that goes along with the presentation. When we're done, I'll send you your own slideshow. It won't be the same exact one as mine. It'll just be the activity cards. And in your packet, you've got, I think, 18 or 19 activities, and it gives you tips and good times. So you're not going to use certain ones. Like, obviously, you'll have to match the experience to the need, right? So some of them will be more for opening, some are more transitional, and some are for refocusing. So those things are all kind of spelled out in your handout. And as we go through them, I'll also try to identify when would be an appropriate time. Some of these things I'm sure you'll be familiar with because I've pulled in from all of my training And a lot of them are original, but they're not so original like that you wouldn't be able to do it. All of it is accessible to anyone with any level of experience. But since you all have a baseline practice, you'll have the opportunity to go in deeper into the packet and read it and reread it and expand. Whereas some people that take this have never like done a breath in their lives. So it's really exciting to have people that might have deeper questions and have some experience actually working with the kids. And I just want to say, Ava, as you see, like there are positions in the world, like actually career tracks for this stuff. You see, like I work outside schools, your mom and Yuhang work inside schools, that you can make this part of your job, or you can even take your education background and create a whole trajectory for yourself that might be unique to your skill set. You're doing education and
Psychology.
exactly. So you may be like weaving that in some special way. So I just want to also say there's not one way to use this. It's not like read this card at this time. I don't think prescriptive things work for most people because we have very different roles. So yeah, we're just going to be adaptable and use it in our own way. So as we're going through how would I use this in my work with kids? This is a question you can keep asking yourself. Also, how may I apply this to my own life? Okay, without further ado, I'm going to start the screen share. There's a chat box at the bottom. Can everyone see that? So you can always speak up, but you could also mute yourselves while I'm talking and unmute. But if you want to stay muted, if there's going to be background noise, you can type into the chat box. Hello, see this over here? And it lights up when I get questions. Do you see the chat box?
Okay. Yep.
Okay, cool. So now, why does this screen share? Here we go. So I'm sharing. You can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. And we're going to get started. And you can see here how to integrate mindfulness into your new life at home, right? So it's like not just the school day anymore. It's like goes beyond that. But we can also, all of us are working in schools. We can also think about how we're going to use that at home with our families or virtually, if we're teaching virtually. Yuhang, are you teaching virtually for your Mandarin school?
No, I teach. She's elementary, but I teach like high school Mandarin. But her school basically is a preschool and K to third, like 2 classes. Her school is K to third. Is
okay.
Class. Yes.
And you're not having to do that online right now?
No. Oh well, probably the school gonna ask me. I don't know.
Okay. Because the slideshow that I'll send you after this, you can always like show a slide and do an activity together. Okay. So you all might do this more in depth, but I tend to ask for something small. And the small ask I have typically in a workshop is, will you commit to a few minutes a day, 5 or 10 minutes each day, so you can incrementally start to change your life, right? You can incrementally learn one technique, one breath, one focus activity, and find a special time to do that. But I assume all of you may go deeper than that, but just that small commitment of a few minutes a day, truly 5 minutes a day is all it takes to start something. And when you do 5 minutes one day, I find for me, it's easier for me to do 10 the next. But to know I only have to spend 5 makes me feel like, okay, I can definitely do this any day. I can wake up and I can spend 5 minutes on this. So for personal practice. And then the other part is, can you spend another 5 minutes practice teaching it? So then when you bring it into your classroom, it feels comfortable. And like I said, there's about 18 activities in here. You can start with just 1 or 2 that you really like. You don't have to practice everything. You can go at your own pace. So that commitment of a few minutes each day, because when things are steady and rhythmic and sustainable, that's when we start to see real results. That's why like we keep practicing. It's why people who do yoga and meditation do it over and over again, right? Because if you could do it and have a magical download once, we wouldn't have to go back. Okay. So one thing about these new practices, right? So we're making a commitment. We're starting out a few minutes a day. And I'm sure that you have all gone through this already, is that when we start to like sit and do mindfulness and do meditation, we are more aware. So you might become more aware of your worries or your physical discomfort. You might become more aware of your distractions and your thoughts. Most of you have probably already gotten to that point because none of you are novice, right? So can any of you remember when you first became aware of all of that stuff? I remember like just recognizing I'm always thinking, and it being like mind-blowing to me, like, oh, I didn't realize I was always anxious. So in a lot of the preliminary data in schools, what happens is when a mindfulness program comes in, before students start to feel better, they actually take a little dive. So I just wanted to let you know that that is a common thing to see, is like when students start to see inside, sometimes it's not perfect. Sometimes it's hard first. But that having awareness, of course, has its benefits. And like, do any of you feel like with an increased sense of self-awareness, your lives have changed?
Well, I was going to say, I think that I used to do things so fast and like one thing after another and like many things at once. And then I realized how to do things one thing at a time. And like even just taking a walk and like listening to the birds and the animals that maybe you wouldn't notice before. Or,
Absolutely.
you know, so it slows you down, it makes you more aware, and like to do one thing only. Like I think you start to realize that after you start practicing.
There's an activity we'll do shortly, the 5-breath space maker, that's started a really big conversation on that in schools, because we're jamming in all this content into a learning block without giving time to close out and mentally and physically prepare. And because of that, we're bringing chaos and anxiety from one thing to the next, and everything's colliding. We don't create a space in between. And we also don't do things in a way that we're like exploring. We're always rushing. So I think you're right. Taking your time and being just in one activity is it's not even culturally relevant. Like we have to break our culture
Right.
to do that. Like, isn't that, it's
Right.
wild that we have to go against the way the whole education system functions. But what I'll tell you is, in the classrooms that do this, they have a heavy investment of time initially, and then everything is functional. Their kids are managing their own bodies and voices and emotions because we're spending the time to teach them how. So it is a heavy front load investment, but it becomes shorter and shorter each day after that initial investment. And voila, we actually end up saving time by being slower and more like purposeful. So it's amazing how we feel like if we rush, we'll get more done. And then the truth is that's a big lie. So some of the things I just personally feel that are the benefits of awareness is like noticing our thoughts that are coming into our minds and like, oh, this must be important to me, or this is worrying me, right? So we can just get to know what's in our mind. And then having a thought or an impulse, but seeing it so you can make a responsible response, a decision, right? Responding is responsible, but reacting is reactive, right? So that moment of pause that we get, oh, I'm noticing I want to, but I'm not, right? And our students, like, this can be life-changing for them because, I mean, I'm in New York City, so the school to prison pipeline is a thing where I don't think it's as serious necessarily in Massachusetts, but if kids mess up, here in public schools, they get the cops called on them, right? So it's so important to help them see and notice, whoop, I'm losing my stuff, and then find a way to tame that. And just when we notice how overstimulated our minds are, we can make choices to destimulate, right? Like putting our hands on our body or closing our eyes, or like you said, taking a nature walk without talking on the phone and, you know, whatever else, like by doing something in a mindful way. And the focus of this whole workshop is really on that. Let's see. The last thing I'll say is, before I get into like how we'll define mindfulness for this workshop, is that distraction is the way the mind works, right? Like we are just a distracted, like all of us, we live in a distracting world because of notifications and outside noises and body sensations and just the natural busyness and loudness. And Yuhong and I both have young children, so it's also like constantly on. Lisa, do you have any other kids besides Ava?
She has a brother, but he's 16. So
yeah.
they're
independent now, but I'm sure you can remember.
Right.
And
I have a niece and a nephew that come over all the time, and you know, they're used to going, like they don't stop when they're here.
Exactly. So we all have distraction, and that's actually a brain's healthy response to stimulus. I'm sure that Ava remembers in teacher training, I would talk about, you know, we're doing yoga in circle time and somebody opens the door and gets dropped off, and all of us look, right? Because our healthy brains say, what's that sound? What are we seeing? Am I safe, right? So it's normal, and we should normalize everybody looking and getting distracted, right? But then how do we kindly draw the attention back? And that is really our job. And that's how we're also working on teaching them. Don't get mad at them for being distracted, right? Because that's, and I'll define mindfulness and explain why soon, but using this kind, gentle, drawing back of attention is the practice of mindfulness. So one thing I see a lot is like a first grader scurrying in their backpack and teachers are like, close your bag. But if you just said, I'm noticing you're looking at your bag, it seems like you're worried about something. Do you want to take a moment, find the thing you need, and then put it away, right? So then they're not sitting there worrying about it the whole class. We're actually acknowledging the distraction. The same thing, like if I'm teaching, I normally have my phone off or on silent, but if there's something I need to be aware of, if I'm waiting on a text message or something that is urgent, I will say, I'm sorry that I will be a little bit less, you know, present with you today. I need to keep checking my phone about every 15 minutes. I'm waiting for something important. Normally I wouldn't do that. You know, so like we're also allowing ourselves to be distracted. I'll say like to my daughter, like mommy's waiting on an important message right now. And I'll just allow myself that, like by telling them why we are distracted and allowing that sometimes we do feel that way. I think that that's important modeling. Okay, so tell me what you think mindfulness is, and all three of you can give a definition, and then I'll define it the way I see it. Who would like to start?
Whose definition, like mindfulness?
It could be the way you come to think about it. It could be what you know as a definition for mindfulness, but really just like, how do you see it?
Mindfulness is pay attention with in particular way, non-judgmental, be aware of things, kindness.
Non-judgmental, being aware. Thank you. What about you, Ava?
Like the present moment, like being aware of what's happening now.
Great. Lisa?
Pretty much the same that what's been said. I just try to explain it to children about paying attention to what we're doing and doing only one thing at a time. So I might do like an activity or rub our hands, and then I might ask them, okay, who was paying attention and really notice the sensation of their hands or that they were warm, and they'll raise their hand, and I explain, okay, now you were being mindful because you were paying attention to one thing. Because they're little, like they're kindergarten and first grade, so you put it like over their head. But with the second and third graders, I try and talk about paying attention and like paying attention to our breath for 1 minute. And I say, you know, it's hard. Your mind will wander. Can you pay attention? And a lot of kids will say, raise their hand and say, my mind wandered off.
Yeah.
And so they tell me what it wandered off to. So it's a way for me to just kind of explain it, but while doing an activity.
And I think keeping it simple is really beneficial, not just for them, but for us. So that is why I define it, paying attention with kindness and curiosity in the moment. All right, so I've heard a lot of you talk about the senses. I was listening to Tara Brach, who's a meditation teacher and psychologist and author, and she was saying when we're in that fight or flight state of arousal, we are not paying attention through our senses. We're often totally stuck in our minds, right? And that in order to come back into a like renew and restore state, the parasympathetic state, using the senses is what brings you to the present moment. So whether it's through feeling, smelling, tasting, the 5 senses, or conscious breath, that these practices actually draw you back and allow you the readiness to learn and think and have that access to the frontal cortex, which is basically shut off in the moments where we are panicking, right? Whether or not there is a real threat, right? There can be perceived threat, but it's up to us to, with kindness and curiosity, nurture that thing we need and get that thing we need and help our students get that thing they need and draw our attention back. And I see a lot of really short, teachers just getting really mad at students or being short with them. And I understand why, because they have a very hard job. But when I'm kind and patient, even if it's hard, or especially when it's hard, they are so much more willing to meet me because I will acknowledge the thing that is drawing them away. And I think that makes them feel so validated. And validation is like a way to open the mind, truly. Like when you feel validated, you're ready and willing. And I think that is truly the difference between being mindful and just trying to be in charge. And so when we're leading and we do that with true mindfulness, when we draw them back and back and back with this loving kindness, it's what builds the relationship that gets them willing to focus and pay attention, even when it's hard. So do any of you have these like formal sitting practices? We're not going to talk too much about that, but that's the other kind of mindfulness, the big M, where you sit silently in the morning and meditate or have like a longer daily practice. And it's not important if you do or you don't. I personally do not. I have like a 5-minute daily practice in the morning. But the big M mindfulness is not what this workshop is about, right? I'm not asking people to give up their entire lifestyle and wake up half an hour early and sit and like do that. That is something you might work toward or already be doing. But the whole purpose of this workshop is little M mindfulness, which is ways we can integrate mindful activity in our work with children and throughout our own day. Does that resonate with you guys, the difference between the big M and little M? Catherine, do you have a big M practice? Yeah, because you are a mindfulness teacher.
Well, just for me, like for my own self-care, because I feel like to start a day with groundness, even though probably not 20 every day, could be like what you said, 5 minutes or 2 minutes, but just really check in. So the day, I feel like I could be more empathetic, enthusiastic. I just feel good for myself.
Yeah, it's interesting that I had let my morning practice slip away because my days are like, before the pandemic, my days were like 15 to 16 hours long between caring for my daughter and then my jobs and my workout and like my other job and then getting home and like dinner. And I was putting my practices in the middle of the day. I knew it wasn't the best, but since everything has pulled the rug out and I'm no longer going anywhere, I'm getting up at 6 in the morning and I'm naturally gravitating towards the cushion. I've been sitting every day. It's something I hadn't been doing, and I didn't even consciously make the choice to. I just recognized myself I'm so aware of my needs that I moved into that practice because I needed it. And it was a moment of pride because I think maybe 5 or 10 years ago, I would have had to say, I need to make a daily practice. And that's a step along the way, right? To say, like, have to consciously make a decision. And then sometimes we are so, like, we have so much practice with it that we can actually feel ourselves readjust instinctively. In this workshop, there will be the structure provided that you can make like a formal plan, like a method, like I'm going to do this and this and this each day. And simultaneously, you can also just weave it in a way that feels natural to you. So I want to offer both of those. And in my life, I've been both whimsical and also methodical and strict. So both of those approaches will work with this content. And in the end of the workshop, we'll talk more about the planners and the ways you can structure this if you want to be formal. And if you want to be more informal, you can just start to weave these things throughout. So the Little M mindfulness is, like, with my daughter, it's been interesting just teaching her how to smell the soap on her hands as she washes and feel, what does the water feel like? She's 3. To out loud teach my like meditation to her. She doesn't see it as a meditation, but it's so natural to do that with a very young child because we think about them as learning completely through the senses. But when we get into the elementary age, we are less naturally kind of asking them to look at the world with this wonder and awe, and we're more thinking about them as intellectual brains, right? So to step back and continue to engage them with these questions we can ask them about their experience, and engage them through their senses is super rewarding. And it's something that really should be, all people deserve this, to engage in the world through their senses. And we really focus on that easily in early childhood. But my point is, it's something we can bring into the older ages and into our adult practices too. Mindful walking, body scans, all of these things are different ways you can have like a moment of mindfulness bliss throughout your day, whereas you don't necessarily have to get up early and stop everything you're doing. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about data before we move into some practices. This obviously is a workshop for teachers, but we can also extrapolate it to our lives. Teacher burnout is a major problem. So many people have come to my teacher training saying, I'm about to quit teaching after 25 years, help. That having the mindful self-compassion helps us stay in our jobs longer, right? We can send love and compassion towards ourselves. We increase that compassion that we need in order to make it through the day. And because mindfulness allows us to be less reactive, for example, when people that meditate sit, they can perceive body sensation as sensation, whereas people who don't meditate would perceive those as pain or something's wrong. So because we're less reactive to stimulus, we actually have a new relationship with stress. It feels like stress is being reduced because the way we respond to stress has changed. It's evolved. And I can even say about a week ago, I was completely anxious. I was not feeling mindful at all. I was feeling really far from my practices, and I was having like yelling fits. And I was feeling like, who is this person that I've become? And it took just a few days of getting up and taking care of myself to shift that behavior back to something I can be more proud of, and to also have compassion for why I was behaving that way. And not only does mindfulness cultivate compassion, but it's empathy. And that's, I think, what you were saying, like, it helps you be able to connect to your own heart and then to feel the hearts of others, to be able to feel for others. And that's how we can be kinder to our students, to our family, patient. heard a lot of parents complaining about how teachers are poorly performing on their videos for homeschool, but these teachers are home with their families. They're scared. Maybe someone in their home is sick, or a first responder or a doctor. But that we can imagine that person also is having a hard time like we are, and love them and appreciate that this is new for them. So this is about relationship building inward and outward. For students, it's amazing to see cognitive outcomes improve, but I hate to lean on that. Like when schools say, we need the data before you can bring this to our district. Because I wish that we lived in a world where helping people learn about their emotions and their mind and their body was important enough on its own. But we see improved behavior outcomes. And that's because when someone is relaxed and safe, they are ready to learn. And also, this is right up your alley, Lisa, social emotional skills. It's so easy to connect yoga and mindfulness with social emotional learning because it's bringing us into the present moment where we can pay attention to ourselves and others. What is the expression on this person's face, right? Kids are very unlikely to just naturally notice that if we are continuing to focus on academia and academia. My daughter is so attuned because of the way we live. If she hears me sigh, Mommy, are you stressed? And I know that's a result of my behavior. Now, I don't want to make her feel my emotions to the point where she's feeling unsafe, but she can perceive emotions of others because we live in a home where we talk about and we learn, like we're talking about our emotions. It's a conscious conversation. And then she sees me put a hand on my heart and belly and breathe and say, Mommy's okay. Mommy just needs a moment, you know? Mindfulness leading to positive emotion, kindness, and well-being. Have you ever done the loving kindness the metta meditations? These meditations where you wish wellness upon yourself and others?
I do. I do it with the kids, and I do it with all grades usually. And then they have a worksheet with me where they draw the person that they sent their kind wishes to.
Love that.
Or we do some of them pick their animal. So they actually seem to really like that one.
I put a little script for it in the handout you'll get.
Oh, good.
It's a great one.
That's great.
Many of the metta meditations are great, and even some of the pre-recorded ones are good. I do prefer to speak it to my students so I can start to notice when they need to be done or if they can do more. And then a decrease in test anxiety and ADHD behaviors. This is really important because kids are being tested all the time, and good or bad, for them to find a way to be with themselves in that moment of stress and use and utilize the tools in a subtle but effective way it's amazing. I'm thinking a lot about the teenagers I've been working with too, just reporting back how this has actually they're so connected to their experience. They're able to say, wow, that really helped. I mean, I hear young kids say it too, like, oh, I did that mudra meditation and I felt so empowered. But it really does come through the whole spectrum of ages that this stuff can really help. So that's the boring data. I do want to say, and you said this a bit, but really the teachers that just ring a bell at the beginning of class, but they don't have any personal practice, are not as effective. I went to a school where the principal rings a bell over the PA in the morning, and it's like a disconnect. I think that there's a lot of good intention behind that, but to have a personal practice that you can share in a small group together is so impactful. I think when you're trying to do something over the PA, student-led is really cool. Like some of the districts I've worked with, the students lead the meditation in the morning. I think that's great. But I'm hoping that we can think about mindfulness as something that is directly impacting the people that we are working with as educators, or family members, that we can do together. So I don't feel like I can, like, all the people that take my yoga training that don't do yoga are like, how am I supposed to teach this? I'm like, well, you need to practice it first. And this is the same for us. But people really need to look at it as something that can be done sustainably. So oftentimes it's like, where in my day will I put this? You might think about your old life, like before the pandemic, and then now, because where you'll integrate your mindful moments will be different. But before the world shut down, I was oftentimes meditating on the subway on my way in, or like if I arrive at a school, like before I cross the threshold, I might take a moment, close my eyes, and tune in. So it's truly up to you where you insert your personal practice. But what makes it effective is the steadiness and regularity. So like where in your day, and you can think about, you can offer, if anybody wants to share now that you're locked at home, and also in your normal life, where would you start to put some of these practices for yourself?
Before this, I like the idea you said before. Before you walk into the school, usually I do that. I pause, I check in. Sometimes I do it in the car, or like literally walk to the door. If I have a moment, I pause and think positively, and try to just try to tune into my body, like listen to my body, and trying to tell myself some positive messages before I teach. And also for now, especially, the situation, I do more loving kindness meditation more to myself and to others, because, stay at home stress, and next week I'm gonna start the remote teaching. I feel like I'm panicked. I'm nervous. So the loving kindness meditation really helped me daily. But I do prefer in the morning too, because it really helped me set a good intention for myself and for others. And
you have a morning practice, and then throughout your day, you're stopping to tune in as well. Yeah. Ava, do you not want to share anything? Any thoughts?
Well, at Providence, I'm in a class, and it's an 8-week class, and it's like a mindfulness class, and this lady like comes into the class, like comes to the school. She doesn't work at Providence, and she like teaches it, and she gives us homework, and it's like off of her, like she has a page or whatever with a bunch of like meditation or like standing yoga or whatever, and she like tries to have us do one a day, and then like we go over it the next week at the thing. So I used to just do it before, like after school, before bed, kind of like if I had time, but I didn't usually do it. But now it's at home, and she like puts us on the screen and makes us say what we did. So I like have been more conscious about doing it. So I usually do it like in the middle of the day, but it's hard, and they're a lot longer than this. They're like 15-minute things.
Yeah, I feel like 15 minutes, if you're not regular with your practice, is very long. If you go to Insight Timer, they have 5-minute ones. You could also self-lead with a lot of the ones from this handout as well. I think starting with 15 or 20 minutes, there's a reason why, right? Like our minds and bodies go into, like, get more settled and go into like more of a healing and receptive state the longer we are able to sit. But to ask people that don't have a daily regular practice to do that is sometimes a way to turn them off from it. And so stepping stones, like taking little practices and slowly expanding them and working up to them, is a nice idea. So maybe if you know you have to do a 15-minute one for her, you can start with a shorter one, like the morning when you wake up or something, and get yourself in the practice of being still and being receptive, so that it's more manageable. Mm-hmm. I relate to what you're saying. When I did my first 200-hour teacher training for yoga, we would have to do 45, 50-minute sits, and my back would hurt. It was too much. I felt my mind going completely crazy, and I wish that they had worked their way to that without starting a whole bunch of novices at that. So I validate what your struggles are. What about you, Lisa?
I think before all this, it was similar. I think I would just kind of check in the morning or on my way in the car and set an intention of what I had hoped the day would be. And then I would leave my school that I worked for. I work in 2 different buildings, so I travel a lot. And then I would go to a 3rd school. Ava's actually her old private school, and I would teach a yoga class to teens in the afternoon. And then I would try and come home, and some nights I would go to a late class, a late yoga class for myself. So that's what I was doing. And now I'm able to, because I have more time, I've been trying to do a yoga class in the morning or late at night. And I just kind of notice how I feel, because I always anytime I would take a yoga class for myself, for working with the teens, it's really their class. So that's why later I would try and do a class for myself, and just notice how I feel. And you just always feel so much better when you take some time and your mind and your body relax. So now I'm just doing it at home, but I actually like some of the virtual classes. And it's that you can do it at your own pace or when it's good for you. But I like really getting up early in the morning and doing something early if I can.
Yeah, I hear you. It's been interesting doing virtual things. I find I'm much more likely to participate if it's 12 minutes, but if it's an hour, I don't really have a great relationship to the screen when I'm not teaching. So for me, it's been finding my personal practice in the morning, and then all of my educator friends and fitness friends have been offering so many great things that I've been able to try out throughout my days, and each of my days have looked totally different. So it's nice having the variety I would normally not have. I would normally wake up and do qigong, and I would have, now it's I'm actually getting to expand my repertoire and support and connect with more people, even though we're in these weird backwards home times. So
Laura.
Yes.
Can I ask Ava a question?
Yes.
Ava, is that the 8 weeks course, the mindfulness, is that the mindfulness-based stress reduction?
Yes.
Yeah.
Same question. I had the same question.
Yeah. It's a lady from Brown comes to Providence College and does it.
So
Did you eat the raisin yet?
What?
Did you have to eat the raisin yet?
No.
No.
Because they moved the program from UMass, and UMass and Brown now are together, and it's all through Brown University.
Very cool.
So she used to come to the school. So I used to, because I teach at the gym at Providence, so I would used to teach my class, and then it would be right next door. So I just go to that right after. But now it's online, and it's hard. It's hard to want to go to it though, because it's so late at night.
What time is it at?
It's at 7 to 8, which isn't that late, but for going on a computer call, it's late after just kind of doing stuff, because I usually do all my work in the morning and then exercise in the afternoon. But at school it's different because we're up to the latest hour. But I go to bed really early here.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, it takes a lot of tweaking. I actually have to say I tried to do the MBSR online, and I only made it through the 3rd week because being online also did not work for me. And so knowing the way you learn is really important, because if it's something you could potentially try again when the world resumes, not that I'm advocating quitting it, but that knowing yourself is also part of being mindful. Is is this working for me? Can I find a way to make this work? 7 to 8, I can see why, because having the bright screen and being made alert and then wanting to go to sleep early and start your day early can be tough.
Yeah.
How many more weeks do you have?
We did, I think we're on the 4th week, so there's 4 more.
You can do it.
Yeah, I do remember that when I took that course, especially body scan. Every time I they gave the CD or they gave the link, I fall asleep most of the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's so relaxing at the same time. That's long. It's really the homework every day, is long. So
Yeah.
I think the point of it is to give you a true daily practice and a true mirror in, and that you have to be uncomfortable to become it. There's a reason for it, but it's certainly something that takes a lot of dedication. So I don't know if any of you are going to have this experience as much as the normal grown-ups I work with, but going from awkward to less awkward, it's all about just taking a few minutes to practice new activities until you feel like a fluency and a comfort with the activity. So that's why I didn't order like what to do first in this. I really think that there will be some that resonate the most with you for the kids you'll be working with, or for you at home, Catherine, with your kiddos. There might be some that you like more than others. So it's just becoming familiar with it, not rushing it, practicing it on your own, or practicing it with your kids and letting them know, I'm still working on learning this one, and doing it over and over. And I think that we might feel that they need a lot of variety, but you could just introduce 3 activities and then let them choose. And then once those feel really like you have got them down and they've got them down, you can always add more later. So I think going slow, giving yourself time to learn it. And then with the kiddos, if we don't give them time to reflect, whether it's journaling or out loud, it's not mindfulness. And I think they don't have an inner voice yet. So letting them say it out loud and then having them tell a friend and then having them think about it in their mind, this is how we develop that inner voice. But every time we do an activity, they should have that opportunity to experience how it was felt. Otherwise, we're just doing exercises, right? It's like we have the experience and then we pay attention to what that was like for us. And kids really like to share, and that's because that's how they learn. Saying what they learned out loud, writing it down, drawing it. These are the reason we're all teaching that way is because that's what helps them actually truly learn it. Any questions right now?
Nope.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to we're going to go into the activities first that are on your cards. These are the cards at the end of the packet that you can put in your Peace Corner or make copies for the kids. I'm going to just give us a 5-minute break if you want to grab water or anything. Also later in the workshop, we may do the mindful eating activity. So you could bring one morsel of food to take a bite of later. So right now it's 11:58. So we're going to come back around 12:03 and start again. I'll pause the video. I'll pause the recording. And we will come back in just a moment. Sound good?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
To try shit.
Right here.
Oh.
And if you want to open to, in the back, there's some cards. Where are they? And this activity we're going to be doing is the star tracing one. You could also trace the one on the screen if you want, whatever you want. So, do you see it, Ava? It's like it's like the last page.
Yep.
Found it. So it's just in the interest of time, I might get started. So the activities that you got on the cards made the cut because they fit on the card. Some of them had just too much language to put on a card. So I had my designer just pick some that would work well on cards. So you got those 6. So the first 6 activities we'll do are the ones on the cards, because I'm hoping that because they have a card, they'll be the most used. Hi, Catherine. So if you, I don't know if you printed this or not. If you did not, it's okay. This is the second to last page in the book. It's one of the activities from the cards. And if you don't have it printed, you can always use the screen. And basically, I use the star tracing breath when I notice that the attention has gone out and around, right? So like we talked about different distractions. If people are listening outside the classroom, if they're kind of looking around, this can be one to hone in on one place. And because it has colors, right? If the kids can't read the words, you can just have them, start with their finger on an orange point, or, like you can direct them with the colors. So let's just practice this one together. So you'll place your finger somewhere on the star where the light green and the dark green are touching. And you'll trace up the dark green as you breathe in. Hold your finger on the orange as you hold your breath, and trace down the light green as you breathe out. Breathe in the dark green. Hold your breath on orange and breathe out light green. Dark green, breathe in. Orange, hold. Light green, breathe out. Dark green, breathe in. Orange, hold. Light green, breathe out. Dark green, breathe in. Orange, hold. And light green, breathe out. And just take a moment to notice how you feel. And if you have any questions or thoughts on application or specific ages of kids or anything like that, let me know.
Sarah, so for the breathe in and breathe out, for the breathe out.
Oh, Catherine, I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay.
Oh, wait. I'm sorry, mine was muted. Try again. I can hear you. Okay, there we go.
Question about the breathe out. When you say breathe out, do you have so you lab all the kids have different ways to breathe out? Could be like ocean, or it could be roar, or it could be like mouth and nose. Do you have a specific or something you prefer?
Great question. So with breathing, I often will try to teach them to breathe in and out through the nose, because the breathing in, specifically breathing in through the nose, is important because the nostrils have really important functions of cleaning and purifying and moistening the air and directing the air and increasing the air pressure. But because young children are often congested or have allergies, it's important to be inclusive of that. So when I'm teaching about how to breathe with kids, for example, I will have them try breathing in and out through the nose. It's also okay to breathe out through the nose or mouth. It doesn't necessarily matter. There will be some breaths where we're making audible exhales. Also, sighing is a way to release grief. So in certain breaths, that will be part of the instruction. With this one, it's like a visual focus. I want them to feel that they're breathing. I wouldn't necessarily give a ton of instructions. Maybe when they're first trying it, I would just have them trace and breathe. And the more time we spend with it, the more directions or detail I can give. But if I'm working with a pre-K class, I'm just going to say breathe in and breathe out. I might not give them much more on their first, second, third try. Then maybe if we're doing it over and over, I might say, okay, this time we're going to try breathing in through our noses and out through our noses, or in through our mouth, noses and out through our mouth. But I generally avoid breathing in through the mouth unless there's some reason that they need to. Does that answer your question?
Fine. I just had a question. Do you find, like, with the older kids, do you have them practice this, or would you just have them do it in the air with you?
So I have, actually, great question. So sometimes in a classroom, I will actually take painter's tape on the floor.
Oh, okay.
I'll like make a shape on the floor. It doesn't always have to be a star. This is just the one we had illustrated. We're also going to do one with our hands shortly. So like they can all use their hand if they don't have a star. Or because you have this PDF, you can make them their own copy if you wanted them to have it. They could do it in the air. It's a great idea. So there's a lot of ways to do it. Also, like in one of the schools I recently did this workshop with, they placed the card in a piece corner, and then they placed a few star-shaped objects there as well. So they could do the card, or they could do like a Play-Doh cutout.
Oh, okay.
So there's a lot of ways to expand it. Yeah, so, but if they are just imagining drawing the shape, there are a few kids that might feel anxious having to create the shape of a star.
Mm-hmm.
So if you know you have kids like that, you know, you might want to actually provide them something that they can touch and feel, which is why we can teach them to do this over the smart board. You can make their own copies, or it can be something that they're using on their own as well, because this is a pretty simple one to do. So I think it's a lot about knowing your kids and what they need and respond to. Good?
Yes.
Okay, so this breath of joy is one of my favorites, and all of these in your handout have a lot more information, a lot more instructions than what's just on the cards, like in terms of like when to use it and how to use it. I love the breath of joy because it is a mood booster. It makes you feel better. If there's a lot of difficult emotions, heavy emotions, or just tired, lethargic people, this is a great breath, and it gets you physically moving, and it tends to make you feel joyful. It's also a little bit silly. So if everyone's kind of getting serious and you want to make the mood light, this is a great one. You'll need a little more space for this one. I'm going to step back a bit. I'll show it to you first, and then I will teach it. So it looks like this. Ava, did we do this in teacher training?
Mm-hmm.
Catherine, did you see this in teacher training too?
Not really, but I love this.
Okay, so let's try it together. So stand up. And the kids can think about, like, if they're conducting music, they might hold like their arms like this. So we're gonna go, it's 3 sharp breaths in. So you go up, out, up, and down. Up, out, up, and down. So on the up, out, and up, it's all breaths in. Up, out, up, down. Up, out, up, down. Up, out, up, down. And then just take a moment to notice how you feel. And I do just want to note that when this one's new and there's a little bit of confusion, they may mostly think about, am I doing it right? It doesn't really matter if it's right, honestly. It's like, this is one where technique's not that important. It's kind of more of a feeling and a momentum. So dispelling the need to do this right is really helpful, because then kids can notice more how they feel. How did you feel trying this breath? Good. I always notice the energy comes up into my chest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of energy. Your heart beating faster.
because this is more of like a pranayama, more of like a intense breathing exercise, my recommendation is that you do it with kids no more than 3 to 5 repetitions. So you can do the one slow one when you're learning it, and then just up to 5 times. And that's true. I really didn't include a lot of like intense pranayama in this. It's more mindful activities than breath, but a lot of times it's noticing breath and conscious breathing that bring us back. But this is one of the ones that's more like has the potential to agitate or has a potential to get you in an aroused state. But there are times when that's needed, when we are like losing our energy, and that this can really be a helpful breath. Can you imagine doing this with your kiddos?
How did you come with the name Breath of Joy?
This actually isn't my original. This is one that I learned in my 19 years studying yoga. That's just the translation they've given this breath. And I learned it from Rebecca Pacheco, who wrote Do Your Own Thing. It's one of the like manuals on how to live yoga, basically. She was one of my teachers back in Boston, but it's not hers. It's not original. It is one that comes directly from the yoga lineage. So
I've tried this in the class with, I call it conductor breath from like the Yoga for Classrooms.
Oh yeah.
But the kids actually like doing it. They like following along, and they always seem like awake and alert afterwards. So I do like that one.
Oh yeah, and that's one of the breaths that she has in her 200 yoga pose, her textbook, Lisa.
Yeah. I mean, there's all different versions of things. So sometimes,
Yeah, like, you'll notice today there's probably 3 or 4 that are very similar, or like this one, like I said, this is not an original one. It's just the way I wrote the instructions. But there's a lot today that will be similar, and then there's a few that are original that are like ones I've completely made up. But what I will say is the great thing about mindfulness and yoga is that we are learning from our teachers, and we don't have to invent something new. We're using what has been proven to work, and it's awesome. This one is definitely out there in the world. It has different names. Take 5 breathing. I learned this so back about 6 or 7 years ago, when I was living in the Boston area, I led a PD, a professional development for the Belmont School, one of the elementary schools in Belmont. And my colleague there, Nicole Torniero, taught me this one, which I had my illustrator make an image for. But Take 5 breathing is also one of those ones that has many different names. But the point of Take 5 breathing, it's just like Star Breath, where you're like tracing something. So it does bring the visual focus in, but the added sensation, the feeling, so you're seeing and feeling, and you don't need anything for this. So Lisa asked, well, what if you don't have a star for everyone? We got some creative ideas. Everybody that has a hand can do this anywhere they go. So it's one I really like. And that's why you see this in a lot of the different curriculum out there, because if you learn something that you have to have an object for, it can become kind of it's not as much of a tool for the students to use anywhere at any time. So it's nice to have things where they can access it in a special area within the classroom, and then things that they can do anywhere in the world. Okay, so spread your hand wide. And then I like to look at my hand. Usually when I'm teaching it, I'll point my hand out, but because you guys are grown-ups, I can point it in. And you're going to trace, and just so you know, if you work with like little kids, first they have to practice tracing, but you all work with bigger kids, so they don't have to practice that. So you're going to trace up your pinky as you breathe in, and trace down your pinky as you breathe out. Trace up your next finger as you breathe in, and trace down as you breathe out. Trace up your middle finger as you breathe in, trace down it as you breathe out. Trace up your pointer finger as you breathe in, and trace it down the pointer as you breathe out. Trace up your thumb as you breathe in, and trace down your thumb as you breathe out. This is one that if they need more, you can do the hand again. You could do the other hand. If you have sensory avoiding children, like children that don't like the feeling of touch, they can trace around the hand. There's ways to adapt this if you have sensory avoiding kids. Sensory seeking, they may need to have a firm finger. They may need to do it more firmly, that the tickling feeling might not be good for, but there's ways to adapt that for different kids. Has anybody seen a hand tracing activity in their mindfulness work with kids yet?
I have seen it.
Yeah.
And it's one that the kids actually really like because they get to touch and feel, and it always keeps them like focused on something.
Yeah, so I love it because it's like bringing their eyes in to one thing and they're feeling that thing. And so some questions I may ask after, like just asking them, what was it like for you to focus your eyes on your hand? What did you notice as you traced your fingers? Stuff like that. So they're starting to have this kind of inner dialogue and this self-reflection practice, that they're not just doing it, but they're doing it, and then they get to think about what it was like for them and notice. What did you notice about? So I like to pair these types of questions with the experience. And I like that this is one of the cards because you could make, every kid could have their own in their desk, or you can have your own area where they have access to it. And it's also one that's in the slideshow you'll get. So it makes it more accessible. This is one that,
It's freezing.
so the 5 breath space maker is one I created because I myself am I can be chaotic in my space. I can be disorganized. My bag can be, all different things smashed together. I can forget to create time within a period to put things away. So in the same sense that this helps me, if you've ever seen like a first grader's desk that just has everything shoved into it, that person doesn't know how to slow down, or they haven't been taught that this is an important thing to make time for, or their teacher is not calm enough to create that structure. So the purpose of the 5 breath space maker, and this also comes with a poster, it comes with a page-sized poster with illustrations in your packet. The one that was, if any of you are on my email, the one that went out with the email yesterday, here it is. It's in your packet. So you can have a visual for this. Okay. Basically that we take one activity at a time, like Lisa was saying, and we just do that. So if you're a math teacher, right, and you've got math class is going to be ending momentarily. All right, students, math class is ending. Let's make a mental note, math is over. Okay, now next we're going to stack our books, put our homework in our homework folder, right, place that neatly in our bag, zip the bag. Then now that that's happened, then they take slow, smooth breathing to notice what they feel. You can insert gratitude. And then once you've done that, you've taken that moment, you've done those 5 breaths, you've felt your gratitude, you've put away the activity, you've gotten calm, then you think about where you're going next and what you need for that. So it's truly a way of transitioning with the physical and mental calm and organization that we require, but that we don't often make time for. So teachers love and hate this. They love it because it truly helps them help their students learn to slow down, but they hate it because it makes them realize that they're constantly on fire rushing and that they actually have to slow down for their students. So I live by this in my house now. Like in my daughter's room, I'll take out certain buckets of her toys, and if I'm sitting there with her, when she finishes one game, I say, okay, now we're done with blocks. Let's put all the blocks away. Do you want some help? I'm so glad we got to play blocks. Let's take a breath together. And so it doesn't actually have to be 5 breaths. It can be whatever works for you, right? So when I'm with her and it's more an organic happening, I'm like, oh, I'm so glad we played blocks, and took a breath. How are you? Like, and I'll check in with her, and then I'll say, and now what would you like to take out? So it's like something that can be really flexible and less formal as well. Could you picture something like this working in your classroom setting, Lisa?
Yes, I've never seen anything like this, so I like this. It's new to me.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of teachers could benefit from it, but I know like it might stress some people out because they seem to try and get in as much as they can in the classroom.
And then they also get mad when their kids can't find their pencil or don't know where their homework is. So
a lot of kids get overwhelmed when they transition from one thing to another.
Yeah.
So that's a really great idea. I like it.
I find like it's so easy for me to get up in the morning and as I'm drinking my coffee to look at my email and listen to a podcast and like, you know, I'm not doing one thing, I'm pretending to do 5. And so for the multitasking world we live in, this is a way to actually recognize it's okay to do one thing. And Lisa, like, it's really brave that you're teaching that because it is not the cultural norm to do one thing with quality. It is a cultural norm to do 10 things with inattention. So this is my way of doing that. And it obviously can be edited to work within like your whatever your desired outcome is. So I think this works for teachers that have kids that have multiple subjects in a day, but it can also work if, so say Lisa, you taught a meditation and everyone's super relaxed, but you know that they need to now get ready to go to math. So you can help them come out of that relaxed state and think about what's ahead. So it's also a way to like get our minds and our bodies ready, our physical and our mental. Any questions or comments? So this one is nothing super new, but it's its own card. And there's so many different ways that you could use this. And I think Ava's the one that said mindfulness is about the senses. So this activity is just helping kids take one sense at a time. And we're going to do a bunch of different meditations today that will help us go into the senses in different ways. For this one, this gives them a little more freedom to like do it on their own. So if they go over to the peace corner of the designated area and lead themselves, if they need a moment and they take themselves away and they can say, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to notice what I feel. I've also seen like, listen for 5 things you hear, 4 things you see, 3 things you feel, 2 things you smell, 1 thing you taste. So like this can be adapted in many ways, but that we're just giving them a little bit of agency with that. Go ahead and take a moment and tap into your senses. So this is one that I would give lots of practice with. Like at the front of the room, I might say, all right, let's do a mindful walk where we notice what it feels like as we step, right? Or I might so I'm giving them practice leading them through different senses. And then this is sort of their independent use of that. So that within a classroom and also like at recess or in the hallway, these can be effective. Does anybody have questions about what that would look like or ideas about application for this within their own work?
No, I think this is a fun one for kids. I think they like doing things like this.
They like choice sometimes. There's some that are very specific to that give more directions and will be less open-ended. And I think that knowing our students, we know open-ended questions can be difficult for some students and anxiety provoking, and for others it can actually be a source of imagination and like refuge. So I also think none of these are one size fits all, and you can be really smart about the ones you choose for different kids or for different classes. Where there are some groups I lead that could totally sit and just tap into their senses, and there are others that this would be very difficult, and we would have to just start with looking around the room and using our eyes in a real active way. And so I'm always thinking about adapting that for different kids and different ability sets. Elevator breathing is another one I made up, and I like to tell a story about it first, and then we'll try it. So before I moved to Brooklyn, I lived in Manhattan, and we had to go up 2 elevators to get to my house. So the culture of the elevator was awkward silence and turning away and stop breathing. And I hated that. So I always had the audacity to breathe audibly in the elevator. I would just, and then you'd notice either people would get more uncomfortable or they would end up breathing too. So that was like a thing I did for myself in an awkward situation. So that's like one way I think about elevator breathing. And the other way is when we think about breathing, let me just pan down a little bit. We can actually, and a lot of yogis do this. Some mindfulness practitioners just breathe naturally, so they're not necessarily expanding the body. But typically yogis will breathe in and they will expand their body. They will breathe in a way that they kind of balloon. And then they will breathe out and they will contract the body. Those aren't necessarily connected. We just connect them in yoga. But your breath in actually fills your lungs. It doesn't fill your chest. That's us expanding our chest. But anyways, the ability for us to breathe in and then expand our belly, our ribs, and our chest is a skill we can learn to help us relax and contract our muscles, basically. This is just a practice of relaxing and contracting. But we can think about that, thinking about the elevator going up and down as we blow our body up, we inflate from the bottom to the top. So I'll show you how I would teach this with more of a visual group, and then I'd show you how I would teach it with a group that needs more soothing. So first I'll do it with how I would do this with a group of, say, 3 or 4-year-olds, or a very visual group. I would say, okay, I have an elevator, and as I breathe in, the elevator comes from the bottom floor to the top floor. And as I breathe out, the elevator goes from the top floor to the bottom floor. I breathe in, the elevator goes from the bottom floor to the top floor, and I breathe out, and the elevator goes from the top floor to the bottom floor. So I could teach them that. And the other way is more like, if anybody's done little flower yoga, they have heart and belly breathing. Have you seen that, where you put a hand on your belly and a hand on your chest? Yeah, so this is, and the purpose of that is that somatic response, or in other words, helping our body come into a restorative parasympathetic response. So we're not in fight or flight, but we're actually coming back into the body in a felt sense of self and firing in our frontal cortex. So the second way I would do this is I would have students place their hands on their belly and on their heart, and I would have them look down or close their eyes, and then breathe in and expand your belly and your heart as the elevator goes up. And breathe out and contract your heart and your belly as the elevator goes down. Breathe in, expand your belly and your heart as the elevator goes up. And breathe out and contract the heart and belly as the elevator goes down. Twice more on your own, breathing in to bring the elevator up. And breathing out to bring the elevator down. And just taking a moment to notice how that practice is landing for you. Oh, I felt so relaxed. Anybody else? Couple notes I'll say before I take any responses. With little kids, they sometimes kind of like floppily place their hands on their body. So I will directly say, place a warm, heavy hands because it's not soothing to kind of have like a tickle hand on you, but to have a warm, heavy hand is. And that for some kids, having a visual is more important than the other kids to have that soothing. So you can adapt this in a way that works for you. Any questions about that one or comments?
I thought the visual with your hands was a great way for younger kids to follow along.
Yep.
So I thought that was really a great way to do it. Both ways are, but that's like something I could see smaller children following along and understanding, and the elevator, you know, it makes a lot of sense. So I don't know, I think that's a great way to show smaller children.
Totally. And that's why I think we can always get creative about how we actually teach it. So there is like a script in here and instructions, but knowing our kids and what their needs are, we can always be the thoughtful adapters and like how will I actually do this with my kids? Right. I just want to show 2 ways to do this activity. I think it's one of those activities where, yeah, a visual learner would love that. And they can also kind of like show their parents, and something that can be really, if there's a lot of frenetic energy and the movement and the need to move, and you can have the elevator start really fast if they're all kind of crazy, and then you can slow the elevator down.
Right.
Because it's always important to start where they are. We can't be like, okay, everyone's wild, so child's pose.
Right.
We've got to kind of meet them where they are. So maybe our elevator's moving really fast, and now we see the elevator can start to slow down as our breath deepens. And so there's so many different ways we can change this to suit that their needs at that moment or our desired outcome. Okay, so this is just like, I was thinking about kind of what we were saying earlier, how Lisa likes to explain mindfulness really simply. And sometimes I'll define it the way we did earlier. But one thing that my teacher, Tara Brock, has said is that the mind is a vast sky, and our thoughts and feelings are the clouds in the sky. And that sometimes when we notice them, they can and dissipate. And other times the clouds stay and kind of stay for a while. And just that clouds and sky don't have like a right or wrong or good or bad value. And it's easier to just notice the clouds in the sky. And then another thing, we were talking about like increasing empathy. And for kids, that might be confusing. What is empathy? But it's just seeing from somebody else's point of view, or like, you know, wearing somebody else's shoes. So I was just thinking about different ways to frame that for kids. And I thought I would throw that in. So what we've done so far are the activities that you have on the Mindful Moments cards that are in the back of your handout. We're going to go through a little bit more about structure and planning, and then we'll finish with the activities we have time for. I did want to say that, like, we can spend more time on things that are more pertinent since this is such a small group. But this, my purpose, I provided all this structure because some people need that and love that. But if the structure part is not really important to you, how you structure it because you're thinking more about weaving these things in, that's also okay. And you can imagine just picking a few activities that you would want to do and when. So here we go. Oops. Okay. So daily practice with your students. So we talked about, I did this for you earlier, normalizing a wide range of participation. It's okay for you to just watch. It's okay to listen. It's nice for you to respond verbally, but you don't have to. Everybody is allowed to be themselves, especially during mindfulness, because this is an invitation to look in, and that can be hard, and we need to do that when we're ready. Everybody needs to reflect when you're working with kids after a mindful experience. So I'm not going to offer them elevator breathing without saying, what was that like? Did it make you feel you know, like trying to get them to identify the experience with words possible or feelings. So I think that, and you may already be doing this, including reflection, including that you will teach and then they will speak or write, is par for the course. To keep the experiences relatively short. So Ava was saying it's really hard for her to do a 15-minute meditation, and she's technically a grown-up, although your brain isn't fully formed yet. You're close. Close. You got another, I don't know, 6 or 7 years till you're fully matured in your brain. So for kids, we need to keep the experiences at least as short as so like if they're 5, the longest we really want to offer something would be 5 minutes. We might start at 2. Of course, there are moments they may be receptive to a longer activity. Generally, we want to keep these relatively short. And when we try to, like, there are some kids' meditations that are pre-recorded. I sometimes do on Spotify with my classes. They're too long. They're 6 and 7 minutes. And my kids are like, they can't finish them. So under normal circumstances, they need to be short. But if your kids are starting to drop in, right, when you have that experience of dropping in, yes, we can keep going. That's why I like to speak rather than use a pre-recorded thing, because I can respond to their bodies. Are they wiggling or are they still? And they keep going. Some kids won't close their eyes, and that's okay. Posture, right? That upright posture. We're going to talk more about posture soon. Not everybody can sit upright very well. So I was with a school district a few weeks ago where people were not in the best physical condition. That when I asked them what they did to take care of themselves, they said sleeping pills and driving the long way home. These were people that didn't have a lot of mindfulness practice. So to think about them sitting up, they can sit in a chair with their hands in their lap and lift up for a few seconds. They can't stay here. This is a lot of work for them. So for other adults we may come into contact with, or for some kids who may not have a lot of core strength, we want to do the upright seat in short bursts and normalize that they might need to use the chair or desk and press down into their lap or onto the table while they're getting strong enough. Especially students that might be heavier, sitting upright is tough. And then you might not get complete stillness. When you do, right? Like, so I always think of those kids that are the most energetic and the most interrupting and the most, when they finally drop in, they cannot be disturbed. And you can't even rouse them if you want to. But to get them into that space might take weeks or months. And so I just want to acknowledge that they might not look perfectly mindful and meditative, but if we keep trying these things, they can have those experiences. We just need to be patient and go slow. Does that resonate, Lisa? I see you smiling.
Oh no, our dog was going by. I was still listening to you. No, it does make sense though, because my classroom has no furniture. And it's hard when the kids come in and they sit, you know, they can stay for a little bit, but you know, then we get up and we move and then we go back down and we get up because it's too hard. The only thing I have a problem with is when I do check back in with them, when I have 24 or 25 kids, everyone wants to talk. And sometimes it goes off on a tangent and I can't actually get to what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, so that's a great, thank you for that example of what makes it difficult. So have you ever heard of a talk and turn or a turn and talk?
I have, through the second step.
Yeah.
With the little kids, the K and the first graders, it's just hard with them.
So like the mindful listening that we did, mindful listening is in this packet, but we won't actually do it virtually. I'll invite you to practice it later in your homes. And turn and talk is a moment to try mindful listening, where one person is the speaker and one is listening, active listening, and then they switch roles. So just like we talked about, we can't just expect them to be able to do these things right away.
Right.
Toward it. Modeling turn and talks and then having them practice it. And you might even say like, green sticker speaks first, red sticker listens first. You know,
Right.
they have a concrete thing. So you're really thinking about this as more of a teacher than from the mindfulness angle. Okay, there's less to keep track of. If I have a green sticker, I know I'm going to speak first. Okay, 30 seconds or less. Maybe you start with 15 seconds. Okay, so when I ring the bell, you're going to tell them one word about how that one feeling word you had from that experience. Okay, when I ring the bell again, you're going to thank each other, and then the second person with the red sticker will give one feeling word about how they went. So starting with small,
Right.
attainable chunks.
Mm-hmm.
Then you might do 30 seconds or a minute where they're getting more time and practice. And then another thing you can do is just say, I'm going to ask for 3 friends to tell me about their experience. Because I know what you're saying, when a child isn't able to get straight to the point,
Right.
the class can lose focus and the kids you can start to lose them. And I totally get how that feels and how that's disruptive to learning. Oops. Sorry, I'm just gonna make sure I'm recording.
Lara,
Yes.
can I say the take turns to speak? Sometimes I use the talking stick. I don't know whether you guys yeah, so my daughter has a talking stick too. So in the class, sometimes I use that. Who takes that and who has the turn? And sometimes I tell them, for example, I separate like 2 or 3 groups and they take turns. And sometimes if one friend talk and the person has to gently pass the talking stick to the other person. And talking stick also has a theme. It says something really like, not just say something that the true things, like the truth, how you feel, like what you said is they know that, because when they do that, sort of have the spirit sense of spirit too. When they hold the stick, says how they really feel, say the truth. Yeah,
I love the talking stick, and that's a visual and tactile representation of whose turn it is. Do you have the yoga pretzel cards? They have the game Pass the Squeeze.
Okay.
Pass the Squeeze is another great way where everybody holds hands. Right now, obviously, you can't hold hands, but if you're passing the squeeze, you get a squeeze, you know it's your turn. You maybe say one word or a quick response. You can model, okay, friends, I know we all have a lot on our minds. We have really important thoughts to share. We need to do so kind of quickly so that everyone gets a turn, because it's really important to me that everyone has a turn. So when you get the squeeze passed to you, please say one sentence, and this is how, and I always go first, so I'll be like, okay, pass the squeeze to Miss Lara. I noticed I felt my breath expand my belly. Pass. So like I'm modeling it. So there's a real structured way of making sure everybody gets a turn, or just letting them know at the beginning, not everybody will get a turn to respond to this, but we'll listen to 3 friends, and then maybe they have 1 minute to color it or write it down. Not every single activity requires a tremendous reflection, but some of them with the most impact, especially if an activity lands, like if you do the 5 breath space maker and you notice everybody's calm and you're like, let's take a moment and just like, wow, I'm so happy to see everyone's so calm right now and everybody's organized. I'm so proud of you. And I want you to know I'm noticing you did this. Those types of ways that your reflection can be their reflection as well. So if you don't have the time and container to like open each thing up with an open-ended, that can be a way to still acknowledge and let them process through your own eyes, and giving them the praise and feedback that they need to notice for themselves. Oh yeah, I'm ready to go to my next class now. We have time to spare. We can, play and stand on 1 foot or whatever. Okay. So creating routines. So a predictable routine increases participation and interest so much. And since I'm an early childhood person, this can be a lot of song memorizing and doing the exact same thing to start and end your activities. But as you work with older kids, you don't have to do exactly the same thing in the exact same way, but you can choose to repeat several activities, right? So you do want it to be predictable, but they need more novelty. They tend to need more variety. If you do the same thing 2 days in a row with a 6-year-old, they might say, hey, we just did this. So finding ways to repeat, but also have a little variety, that's kind of the magic of the elementary age. Repeat, 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 and give some variety or deepening each repetition. So I do think routine is really helpful. Like I've seen, so one of my colleagues that I did a mindfulness hi kitty. Is that a kitty or a doggy? Doggy? What's your dog's name?
This is Chester.
Hi Chester. Oh, look at that tail.
Chester. He's a little cavalier.
So sweet. So I've had colleagues that would turn the light off and ring a chime. And that meant head to your desk and take a breath. Right? So they have a cueing system. So that's their own language, right? The light goes down, the bell rings. All of us are to go to our seats and take a breath. And maybe, so for some, they would have them put their heads down. For others, it was eyes on me. So you can create these like the meaning within the cueing. And I think to use mindfulness activities as a cue, like I ring the bell to mean we're beginning something, right? I do 5 breath space maker to indicate we're ending something. So these activities can sort of encapsulate beginning and end, and then also to draw their attention to, right? So if our attention is drawn away, if we're distracted, or to notice how something is being experienced, right? So these are sort of the ways we can use these activities, and we can do that in a routine and predictable and expected way. So so Catherine, you are going to different classes, or you have your own classroom?
My own classroom, just the 2. No, what I mean is there's only 2 classrooms in Ellie school. So downstairs and upstairs, that's it.
And is that where you're teaching yoga or where you're teaching Mandarin?
Yoga mindfulness.
Okay. But even in Mandarin, are you using any mindfulness?
No, just maybe breathing and some meditation. I call it reflection, just a little bit. Yeah.
So if you're traveling to a space, you're like optimizing the area you're working in. If you have your own space, like it sounds like Lisa has her own classroom, which with no furniture. So you're actually able to optimize a space, and there might be an area within your room where you're leaving props and you're leaving like cushion. You can put a chime or your glitter jar. You're making a space within your room. So not only is the main learning area conducive to learning, but also there's a specific place students can go. So I actually was online and I saw my brand got tagged in a picture because my cards are here. This is somebody's Peace Corner, and what they put. I was like, oh, my things, yay! That was a really sweet moment to see people posting. So this is one example of how somebody set up a Peace Corner. It's inviting, it's simple, you know, like some of the schools I go to have like ball chairs and bean bags and stuffed animal and like a whole shebang. And in other places that's just not practical, and you might just simply print out the cards I gave you and tape, you know, like plastic laminate or tape them. So it can be as extensive or simple as it needs to be for your environment. And because I'm a traveling teacher, I go to my schools. I try to put all the things I would need in my bag. and then create that environment within the container of the class that I'm building. So it can be in a designated area, or it can be the whole class. Now today I'm working in my mother-in-law's house. It's not my normal workspace, but I still brought my white noise machine. I don't know if you can tell, I have a white noise machine on right now.
Me too.
Me keep in mind. Yeah, see, that's such a mindfulness practitioner slash therapist do that too. That makes me feel calm. But if you're working in a loud school, putting that by the door can be a game changer. So anybody here have experience with optimizing your space or making a peace corner?
I have in one of my classrooms, I do have a space in the back for the kids, and sometimes they'll say, oh, I just need a moment, can I go sit back there? And it has a few things, but now I can add some of the things that you have. I could laminate those and put those back there. So yeah, it works out. I mean, sometimes kids see other kids going there, and then everyone
yeah, especially with kindergarten and first grade. Definitely, it's monkey see, monkey do.
Right.
But my colleague Nicole, because she did gradual release of responsibility, which is what we're about to get into, how you actually pass the torch. They knew exactly the guidelines, and they had really explicit practice with how the peace corner would be used.
We might have to see
If you can mute it if you want, if the dog's going to be and unmute when you want to talk. Just one more thing about your peace corner. Inside your handout, there is the the calm, these yoga pose cards are in there, the time for me calming yoga poses. It's all just like relaxing yoga poses. So the 6 I included are all pretty calm and peaceful. It also has a little poster. Sounds like that would work in Lisa's environment because she doesn't have desks, because it's got like relaxation, like lying down. But you could pull the relaxation card out and if you needed to.
Laura, do you mind I ask you a question? Just as a mom at home or the educator, what do you do with your daughter in terms of the corner, peace corner or quiet corner?
So her room is her refuge. She's lucky that she has her own space. And what I've done in her room is she has a hollow shelf, and inside there I place she has her own glitter jar. She has her own cards and her own chime. She has a mat rolled up in her room that has space to be unrolled at any time. She also has a Medi-Teddy. I forgot to grab it back from her. Medi-Teddy is the yoga teddy bear that can do like poses, and it has a really calm face. So her room is that, and what I do to make sure it's optimal is I reduce clutter. So all of her kitchen toys are in a drawer inside of her closet. She has to take the buckets out to use them, and then we put them away. So even though she has it's easy access, but it's not out. So I've simplified her room. She has a special diffuser lamp that has LED like colors, so I can set it to a calming color and I can diffuse essential oils into her room. And then I also have a white noise machine in her room. So the white noise machine, as soon as she hears it, she falls asleep because it's a cue for her. So I don't use it for her relaxation time because I want her to relax awake. And then I put a little desk. It's just like it's like a TV tray, like a TV meal tray. But I just put one of those in her room, like a sturdy one. And she has a small box with 6 crayons and 1 coloring book. So it's like so basic. And I find that is how she uses it. And then in the main living area of my house, I rotate. I didn't bring any with me because I had to bring things that would not break, but I have a breathing ball for her in the downstairs. We have a chest of toys, and I put movement scarves and things like that, so she can grab those. But they're not always out. And the last thing I do for her is we've got a beautiful wooden box that was painted by one of our friends, full of little stones that she likes to hold and touch. These are all little things that I do for her at her home. And what I do to keep it interesting is I rotate them. So for 6 months, the stones were away. I had other things out. I had feathers. And so I just kind of use them around her, because if I explicitly teach her, she's like, no, you're mommy. So as a mom, it's a little different. There's less explicit instruction and more modeling. Whereas a teacher, it's explicit instruction and modeling. I don't know if, Yuhong, if your kids let you teach them or if you have to just model. What do you find?
Model.
Yeah.
Teach.
School,
Opposite.
if you're at their school, they respect you as a teacher. Is that right?
Not really for my Ellie. Yeah, probably half.
When my daughter's at school, she does everything she's asked. She's like such a, not at home. At home, she's like, but at school, when I go to teach her, it's amazing. She's just extremely responsive and respectful. And also, she's an enforcer.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then in the classrooms where I go, I don't bring so much. I bring what can fit in a backpack. So often all I do is I shut the lights off. I ask the teachers to turn off their music, and I use my voice as the main tool of attention. And the chimes. I have all different types of sounding chimes. So with young kids, I'm using these short resonant ones. It doesn't ring for as long as I've got some of those other bells that those long resonant sounds are good for K 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th grade. Young kids, we want them to hear the duration, but we want the duration to be an acceptable length. So I'm bringing props that will be successful for them, and things that I don't care if they ruin, because they ruin a lot of things. I've gone through like 10 breathing balls in my career. Any other questions on this one? Okay. I just put a list of things. I'm going to send you the slideshow, but the Hoberman sphere, the mindfulness jar, I have a blog on how to make it. It's really simple. Don't put oil and don't put glycerin because it will never stop. It will not settle down. I just put hot water, liquid glitter glue, and glitter. I take a bottle out of the recycling. I don't buy anything. I don't get one-time use plastics that other people do. I wash it out, and then I electric tape the top. That's it. Some public schools provide sensory toys. So if you have access to things to touch or a bumpy seat, that can be nice. There's so many good books. Sand timers, water timers. If you can do mats and blankets, it sounds like, Lisa, you have yoga mats and stuff like that.
I do have yoga mats.
Oh, and for mindfulness, the mirror, right? Like, what is the expression on my face? How does my face reflect my inner state right now? So mirrors are, you can get a Dollar Tree mirror, or you can get the shatterproof if you work with little kids. The mirror is such a powerful tool in a mindful space. And I have a separate curriculum called My Body and Caring for Myself, where like we go through all the different body parts and do a mindfulness or yoga practice. And it's like, what does my face tell me about what I'm feeling? And then what do other people's faces tell us? And so like Lisa, it sounds like that has a lot to do with the work you're doing. It's just like social emotional learning has a direct connection with how our face and body are what our face and body are telling us and telling others. Okay. All right, so we can practice at the start of the day or start of the period, and like Yuhong does that in the morning for herself. I also really like to start off mindfully, but for those of us that ready, fire, aim, instead of ready, aim, fire, we can always come back. Oh, false start. Let's come back. Brain breaks. This is kind of a popular way of saying we've had enough and we need to move and breathe and refocus, right? Like that's another time we can use these activities. And then of course the transition. And like that's the only activity I use for transition anymore is 5-breath space maker or a chime. I've just simplified it. Those are the two I do. I'm getting ready to go, or getting my mind and body ready to transition. So I actually, the more I have, the less I do in a way. Like I just get really clear about what's working for me right now. So I just want to remind you, use the activities that work for you at the times that work. Okay, so this gradual release of responsibility is, this is a formal education practice. A lot of teachers learn this when they're getting their master's in education, about how learning takes place. So it begins with explicit instruction, and then it's collaborative instruction, and then independent use, right? So it's like the tools are accessible on their own without you, because like all good teachers work themselves out of a job because the kids could move away, right? They could get disconnected from you. Their school could lose funding, whatever the thing is, that means they don't have you. So you need to be built into them, your voice and your teachings. And this is how that's done. So this is a cute illustration. I love my illustrator's name is Nafiza Hassan, and she's the best. So she made this little infographic for us. So we can, the teacher has a focused lesson, a guided instruction, right? And then we see, so like I do it, and that's when I'm giving the focused lesson. So like Lisa, that's when you're like reading the second step card to them.
Okay.
Right. And we do might be when you tell them the story and then they have to like do the ending. Like if they have a puppet and they have to act out the appropriate ending. It's like you're doing it with them. You might be one puppet, they're the other. And then you do it together. The students work in groups, in pairs. And then they can do it all by themselves. So how this looked in Nicole's classroom, she started in September. We did a workshop in September. And this was before I had this content, by the way. We were pulling random things together from the internet back then. She started every day, 10 minutes in circle time on attentional and breathing activities. Then she was having the kids come up and help her teach. That was like October, November. November, December, the kids were teaching it to each other. They would take turns leading at the front of the room. By January, after winter break, they were going to the Peace Corner by themselves and knowing they didn't have to ask to use it. They knew the conditions. And then they were also going with friends to work out interpersonal issues. Can you even imagine a first grade class that was not functional at the beginning of the year? Not functional. So they couldn't walk through the halls. They could not function. And then she had the most amazing group. Everybody said, what's going on in here? That's why I ended up coming back to do more work with the school, because they could not believe that. But I had so little to do with it, truly, because Nicole spent that time each day. She passed the torch to the kids in this way. So that's why if you're more of a formal thinker about this stuff, this is how you want to think about each activity. Okay, ring the chime. All right, I'm just going to ring it for them. Okay, then I'm going to have someone come up and do it for the class. Then I'm going to have somebody do it for their friend, and so it's like, how can you actually work this out for each activity? And in your handout, there are planners. They're not super in-depth. It's just these red gradual release of responsibility planners, just for you to pick out the activity and figure out what is everyone's responsibility. You can make copies of that page if you want to do that for all 18 activities. But obviously I didn't want to overload you and give you a million zillion of them. So some people can use this. If it's not your thing, you can just hear it, maybe come back to it later. But this is truly how learning gets committed to long-term memory, and how kids can access it without our cueing, but with their own independent use. So this is like, to me, it's a paramount teaching skill. Any questions or comments? And just a little more. So we introduce the activity, offer the experience. Yeah, so basically what we've already said. They can teach each other, then they can do it by themselves without disrupting the class. So that's kind of the goal. Okay, so now we're, it's 1:11. We have until 2:30. We're gonna do a few more activities now. I thought I'd take a couple minutes for questions, then give us another 5 minutes to kind of stretch or take a bite of food or whatever you need to do. Any questions before we do some more activities? How are you all doing?
Good.
Good.
Yeah, that's great information.
Yay, okay. All right, take 5. I'm gonna pause the recording. Right now it's 1:11. Let's come back at 1:16. Oh, and I've got something in the chat window. Okay.
Here we are.
Lisa, what percentage of this is like somewhat new versus stuff you've already been doing?
There's actually a lot of it new too. So like probably 50-50.
Cool.
But I really like the lesson plans that you have.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really helpful because a few years ago there was nothing like this. And there's not a lot of places that have it like streamlined as well as you do.
Yeah, really, to develop something like this takes so much time and money and resources, and there's like really big companies out there, so it's hard to like kind of get in the like lay the inroads, if you will.
Right. Looks like you're doing a good job.
Thank you. Yeah, if after this, if you would do like a video or a written testimonial, will be super helpful, because I think the more things I have like that, the better. Like people, it just trust and that it helps people trust, and it validates the content, because I think when you're like newer and I mean, I'm not new, I'm definitely known in Massachusetts and New York, but when you're kind of not known, I think people can be rightly skeptical. So
Right.
same question for you, Catherine. What percentage of this is like newer, and what percentage of this is like similar to what you've already learned or been doing?
I would say similar to Lisa. I like a lot of ideas, the actual instruction you give to us, so I can use right away. And a lot of things are new, actually. Maybe I would say 40-60.
40 is new or 60 is new?
60 is new.
Cool. Okay, that's awesome, because I didn't want to hand you something that's already what you know, but I also wanted to include like the types of activities that I think we need. Like that's why people have the hand tracing and they have the star tracing, because it works. Okay, so the last, third of the workshop, we're going to do some more mindfulness experiences. We won't do every single one, like I said. I just thought it would be cumbersome to do like a 5-hour online training. So we'll do most of it. And then, like I said, for mindful listening, I recommend you do that out in the world with the people you love. And Ava, you did that at teacher training, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Catherine, you did too at the kids yoga teacher training. Did we do mindful listening? Yeah. So you have some experience with that one. I think that's the type of activity we should be doing over and over and over again anyways. Did you ever try one, Lisa, where you either just listen or speak and then take turns?
Well, I usually do in the beginning of my class, we do like mindful listening with the tone bar.
Oh, cool.
So we always do that. And in first grade, I have a helper and they start off the class.
Cool.
So, so they always do a listening before we start, and then we do a breath. So that's like kind of my routine. They know those are the order that we do things. Then I go into the class. So we do listening in the classroom. Sometimes I open the windows. So we do listening out the classroom, and then we do in the hallway.
Very cool.
So that's how I try to incorporate it with them.
Love that. Okay, so I'm gonna go back on the screen share. And oops. So I just included a picture of what a mindful seat looks like when you're sitting in a chair. And I just wanted to draw attention to the fact that I'm not using the ergonomic back. I've got my knees kind of over my ankles. Mine are not perfectly aligned, but I'm also placing my hands on my lap in this picture. So you can see I'm helping myself sit upright. And I just wanted to remind you that like the normal way we sit in a chair is fine for most activities, but when we want to draw special attention and become alert, that if we're in a chair, this is the way we sit, which differs from the normal way we would sit. And just to remind you, if you're ever working with other grown-ups in the room, if they don't have that practice, if they don't have physical strength or practice sitting upright, this can actually be strenuous for someone who's new. So to offer it in small chunks, and that's also true for kids that might just be lacking the fundamental core strength to sit upright, to press down into your legs or to push your elbows into the table can really help them sustain this, and to just do short bursts is totally fine. Okay. I'm sure that you guys all know how to sit crisscross applesauce, or easy seat if you're with big kids. I did want to just point out that for some people, sitting on the floor in crisscross is uncomfortable. And you know that that person's uncomfortable if their knees are coming way up or if they're like kind of slumping into their own lap. So if you notice you have students that cannot sit crisscross, or let's remember that kids wear jeans. A lot of kids wear jeans. Child's pose and crisscross applesauce can be uncomfortable in jeans. So you might want to offer alternative seating in your mindfulness activities. I also offer hero seat where they can sit on their feet with their knees ahead. So I like to give alternatives, but just that crisscross applesauce is not always easy for every kid. Although for like, you know, K through 3, Lisa, it's usually easy enough. Definitely. But the older the kid, the less comfortable, like in a group, you'll have more kids that are uncomfortable sitting that way. I love crisscross applesauce if I'm like in circle time versus that mindful seat if I'm kind of going into a class where there's desks and they're staying at their desks. So it's just different options. So this kind of sounds a little bit like what Lisa does to start her class, this 3-part meditation. And I'll tell you about it, then we'll try it. And you can, so you'll get into your mindful seat. You can either do crisscross applesauce, or if you want to do your mindful seat in a chair. And then what I'll do is ring a bell and we'll listen for the whole sound. The next thing we'll do is tune into our breath. So it doesn't mean we have to shape the breath. But we'll just listen and feel for the breath. We can hear it go in and out, or we can feel it maybe go into the nostrils or into the belly. So just how we pay attention to the breath that's happening. And the third thing we'll do is just scan the body from the head down. It's not going to be a super deep body scan because when we're thinking we're working with students. So oftentimes I'm just naming a body part. I'm not, you know, an adult body scan, you might say, make sure not to judge it as pain or whatever. Like I leave all that out with kids and I just have them notice that body part. Now pay attention to your head. Now, you know, as they get older and can handle more, you can play pre-recorded body scans that might have more of that information in there, more like a mindfulness-based stress reduction meditation would be. So have you tried those, Ava, the body scans from the mindfulness-based stress reduction?
Yeah, they make us do the body scan sometimes for our homework.
Yep, and so you can send them too. Those are very in-depth. It talks a lot about how we label things and how we give things values of like good or bad or painful or unpleasant. I'm really not doing that with my students consciously. But as I said, if you deepen and you get them able to do this, then maybe you're going to offer them more of that information. And you could maybe provide something you might normally do with older kids or teenagers or adults. And this is specifically different because they're kids and because I just want to bring them through the body, but not add a lot of extra thinking. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay, so I invite you to your comfortable seat. I'm gonna just turn off my camera for a second. How do I do this? I don't know. Why can't I do this? Okay, where is it? All right, I'm gonna leave it on because I can't figure it out. Wait, here it is. Okay. There we go. Okay, put this back up. If you want to turn your cameras off, you're welcome to. And this will probably be about a 2-minute meditation. So first, I'd like to invite you into your mindful seat, whether it's on the floor or in a chair, allowing your spine to become upright, feeling the ground or your seat support you. I invite you to close your eyes if that feels good. Otherwise, you can look down the bridge of your nose with a gentle focus. Next, you'll hear the sound of a chime, and your only job is to listen to the sound as it rings. Oops. Now tune into your natural breath. Notice the feeling of the breath as it comes in and out of the body. Notice where you feel the breath come in and out of the body. Notice any sounds you can from your breathing. Notice your body breathing. Now bring your attention into your head. Scan your attention to behind the eyes, the jaw, your throat and neck, your shoulders, your chest, your ribs and belly, your hips and pelvis, your seat against the floor or the chair, your thighs and knees, your shins and ankles, the tops of your feet, the bottoms of your feet. Notice your whole body. Just take a moment to notice the effects of your meditation. Whether your eyes are closed or open, tuck your chin. If your eyes are closed, slowly open them. And when you're ready, lift your gaze again. Questions or comments?
I thought it was relaxing. Very peaceful.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about your class, Lisa, and you've started with already the chime and the breathing. So to expand it would be not too much of a reach.
Right.
And that starting with something more attainable on a daily basis, because it's not every day we can drop in like that with our kids at the start, right? So this might be a reach, but to just do the first part, and when you have the opportunity, when you can sense that they're ready to add that third part, the body scan.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, Catherine, since you normally do more of a formal body scan, what was it like to do a quicker body scan?
I love that. I think a lot of the time I cannot, have that chunk of time to do the body scan just like the 8-week course. For me is, for my own practice, I usually do a quick one too after the meditation. Well, usually towards the end, I give more self-loving. I have the white light to be thought. I feel like
Thank
I
you.
do that with the kids too. I just say, imagine there's a white light on your, around your, I don't really say the crown or just on your head. Just keep it simple and then go down to back to that towards, like, what do you do?
I like the white light. A lot of my friends and colleagues do meditations with a white light or a blue light. I have some meditations where you imagine different colors in your body too. For kids that need a visual or who are very imaginative, especially our younger kids, that's a great way to adapt something like that. So scanning down the body, adding in a light or something that they can visualize. With breath, I'll often have them fill in with colors and empty with colors. I know Lisa Flynn does that in her work too, right, Lisa? Yeah.
Cards.
Yeah. Okay. All right, I'm going to turn back the screen share again. Here we go. We did the 5 breath space maker already. I do invite you when the workshop is over to put this activity to use, and we can close out that way where you can actually physically and mentally put the workshop away. I actually wish I had put this as the last slide, but alas, my past self didn't do that. So the slow down sensory snack is one I usually do in my teacher trainings for kids yoga. So did you do this one with me, Catherine? You did. Ava, did we do this one in your group?
Yeah.
Okay. And it's also part of the MBSR, the mindfulness-based stress reduction. Have you seen anything like this, Lisa, where you mindfully eat in something?
I do one, I don't know if you're familiar with, the second step curriculum has Mind Yeti, which is mindfulness online that goes with the curriculum, and they're all different guided brain breaks.
What is it called? Mind Yeti?
MindYeti.com. So if you go, I believe it's free. I have a Premier account with the school, and one of the sessions is mindful eating. So in my class, I do a slice of orange because I also have to make sure, like with health regards, with the nursing, with the staff.
Yeah.
So I have to find something that everyone can eat. Usually an orange is okay.
That's what I do, is make green oranges.
Yeah, they have a 7-minute script, and he talks you through. There's no pictures of, it's just a script, and they follow along and do that with me. And they actually always seem to remember that one. And it takes a long time, but look up mindyeti.com. It has some great scripts for kids, and it's made for them. It's made by the second step. So it goes with the curriculum.
Very cool.
Now just released some videos. So there's short videos that show you about your brain, what is mindfulness, and they explain it in short ways for kids to relate to them.
That's cool.
Yeah, so that's how I incorporate it, and then they draw about in their workbook, because I also use Mindful Schools.
Yep, I like them.
And so I use a workbook, and I only integrate like the papers and the pieces that I do with them that find appropriate. Because I find a lot of kids like to draw about what they just did.
Yeah. I like the illustrations over videos with kids personally for mindfulness because I want them to have an inward experience. So if it's an instructional video before, but if it's during an activity, I prefer, which is why I've actually stuck with like illustrations versus video and getting animation. So
Right.
I like to think about their path in,
Right.
as like intention going in as much as possible, but oftentimes just having a visual to look at is helpful. Do they do but the script sounds great because they can just listen. Can they get through the whole 7 minutes?
Yeah, they do. That's why, that's one, like I usually don't play a lot of audio. The only one that I feel that works with kids, young kids, is Headspace has it for children geared to their age.
Cool.
So you can turn it to any age group, and every single script is managed 4 minutes to that age group. And usually they're very short, like 1 to 2 minutes. And younger kids, like it might be a visualization about frogs or balloons. And usually after it, if I talk to them, they can handle that and can tell me about it and what they remember and what it was about. But usually I don't use audio. I try and do everything in person because I feel like it's getting harder and harder to teach because everything is with technology. Yeah. So the face-to-face is important, and so that they can communicate and look at a person. And so I do that. But the Mind Yeti one, surprisingly, they can do that one. And they like it with the fruit. And he tells, every step, like bring it up, look at the outside, bring it to your nose. And then they laugh when he says, bring it to your ear, and it's a slow process, but they usually say it's the best orange they ever ate in their life.
Yep, that's what I get all the time. I actually do this with, I usually do guest speaking at undergrad for my friends' early childhood. One of my colleagues is an early childhood professor. So I go in and I work with like the 18 to 25-year-olds that are learning to be early childhood teachers. And some of them have never eaten a blueberry because this is like Bunker Hill and Mass Bay. So a lot of them live in food deserts. I'm like teaching grown-ups what an orange tastes like through this activity. So it's actually really cool because it can be a way to expose children in a safe way to like a healthy food as well. Or just, that we scarf as a culture because we're always rushed, and lunchtime at school is very short, but they can take a slow first bite. So I like to remind them, we may not be able to change the whole day, but we can change the way we pay attention to our first bite. And the benefits of engaging the senses before you scarf food is that your stomach acids start to get your belly ready to digest, and your saliva, and that helps break food down more easily. When we just eat without any anticipation, it's more work for our body as well. So this actually makes our body more efficient and ready. So that anticipation and all the senses get our body ready to do their job. And that way we get less tired when we eat. So it's like one of the nice benefits. That's cool. We all have experience with that one. I have yet to try it with my daughter. I wonder if she'd be willing to try it. I bet if I use that script, she would.
Yes. I mean, you can see she's a little bit younger.
Yeah.
But yeah, you should check it out, the Mind Yeti for her.
At the end of this, I will have you, we can all share resource links. We did elevated breathing. So some of these are out of order. Hand wash meditation. Okay. So before the pandemic, if I had asked you how you normally wash your hands, what would you have said?
I put soap on my hands and I wash them, and that's it, probably. I don't really pay attention to it.
Yeah. A lot of times I noticed I would wash my hands and I would wash the soap off before I even made bubbles. Because I was thinking about what I'm going to do next instead of engrossing completely in the sensory experience of hand washing. If you live with toddlers and they wash their hands, they are in it. A toddler a baby washing their hands, it's like everything is so wrapped up in that experience that they are like in the natural state of this. By the time we're working with 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds, they're like done. Now, of course, we're living through a time with a lot of panic and fear around getting sick and this mystery illness, and our kids are feeling anxious. So hand washing may also become an anxiety-provoking activity, if you think about it. So my hope with this hand washing meditation, and just like the mindful eating, it's like, how do we bring our attention to the sensory experience of washing our hands? And in that savoring, in that pausing, there is one of the practices of gladdening the mind. So Tara Brach talks about there are things that gladden the mind, that make you feel happy. Savoring is one, pausing is one. So just to pause and savor the experience is a way to feel truly happy with something that is so basic and everyday. I don't have a 7-minute script for this, but there is like a full instruction in your book. I highly recommend this right now, where we're washing our hands so many times a day, that this can be one of your little M mindfulness breaks. You have to wash your hands every hour that you're awake. Well, 16 times today, you can wet your hands, feel the water run down your hands, put the soap on, smell the soap, feel the bubbles. You can look at each section of your hand as you wash it, right? We can take slow, deep breaths as we rinse the water off, thoroughly dry our hands. My hands are clean, my hands are dry. Like this whole mental practice of also then encapsulating it, okay? Turn off the faucet and done. So it's like, it's an encapsulated activity, but it's an activity we're fully doing. It's another one I invite you to do it when we finish today. You can do your 5-breath space maker, and then you can go do your hand washing meditation. I have been working in early childhood for a long time, so I constantly have to wash my hands even before the whole pandemic, and found that this brought a quality to my day that I otherwise just went through the motions of. For students, I think that this is something that they can really tap into their senses for as a little vacation, right? They can enjoy this, because if they're washing their hands all day anyways, what does it smell like? Maybe we can get nice smelling soap. It doesn't have to be yucky scented soap, but just something that has an enjoyable sensory experience. We don't normally monitor our kids as they wash hands necessarily either, but I'm thinking about, Catherine, how you could do this with your kiddos at home. You know,
so wonderful about this. My daughter always said, "Mommy, so much bubbles, smell that." I was like, "Come on, time for her."
How old is Ellie now? 4?
He is 5. My son Abraham is 3. My son is better than me too for this. It's always like, what is that? Smell that, and also feel the bubbles. Show me. I was like, oh, how I could, pause more when I wash. But I will try today, especially.
Yeah, I love this one personally. And even just if this one you keep in your back pocket for yourself, it's a way to, I know like as somebody who works in schools all day, it can be necessary to take a vacation throughout your day. And this is a way to fully be where you are and not be like, oh my God, my next class, whoa. It's like, yes, of course, all those things are still true. And I can have this amazing pause, this amazing savoring. And that's also like back to the mindful eating, that savoring of that bite, that paying attention with all of our senses. It's a ticket to joy that we can use over and over. Kids are so excited about the mundane, like watching that. You're talking about Ellie still talks about the bubbles and she's 5. There's something that's so beautiful about the innocence of childhood that we lose as adults because we just take things for granted. So this savoring of mindful hand washing is like, it's a way to tap back into that innocent childlike joy of life. The mudra mantra, a lot of people have different renditions of this. I've heard like peace begins with me, I feel so powerful, or different ones. Right now I've been using I can handle this. So let's think of a forward thing we can mantra we can repeat together. Does anyone have an idea for a forward mantra? Did you say something, Ava?
No.
So we'll just do I can handle this. So you tap each finger as you go. So you put your thumb to your pointer and you say I, then pointer, your thumb to your middle finger, can, thumb to your ring finger, handle, and thumb to your pinky, this. I can handle this. So we'll start with a strong, firm voice. We'll slowly get quieter and quieter until we can mentally repeat it inside the mind. Now, why do we need to be able to mentally repeat something inside the mind? Let's think back to test-taking anxiety, right? They can't sit there and be like, I am so powerful in a test, right? That's crazy. But if a child can inwardly cheer themselves on and gain that feeling of self-assured readiness, confidence, but without disrupting the room, right? This is their mental process. We're going from out to in. So this is how we develop an inner voice. So we're going to start strong. If you have students that would be so embarrassed they would rather slither under the table than do this out loud, you can offer to them that they just think it too. One thing that to prepare for is that some kids will say, I can't handle this, or I can't, or I'm so not strong. They will do that, and sometimes they're being silly, but I try to really disallow self-deprecation in my class and just remind them that we're in an environment of kindness to self and others. Even if you're being silly, let's please use kind language in here. And that's how I would redirect them. This is something that comes up a lot with this. So we'll do I can handle anything. I can handle this. 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 Soft whisper. Inward repetition. And just notice how you're feeling. Ooh, I noticed a lot of raw emotions right now. It's been a kind of a hard couple of weeks. And I noticed that even saying this, I felt how tender I am right now. Normally I feel so empowered by this, but like I said, things are not magic wands and they don't have one way of affecting us. Did anybody else want to share their experience with that?
Usually for me it's the mantra. I ask them. Sometimes I repeat it, but they all know that especially towards the end, I can be calm, I can be quiet, I can be still. I repeat it several times. I don't know whether it is considered like yours, but I like yours.
Thank you. Yeah, I had the teachers, I recently had this workshop with a group of elementary teachers who said they wouldn't say I can handle anything with their students because that would be too hyperbolic, too exaggerated. They would probably say, I can handle this. And I liked that. So I'm always adapting, and when we adapt things we learn from others, it means we're just still learning. Okay. Everybody kind of has seen these in the world. Oh, I hear somebody's, is that your kiddos?
Sorry.
That's okay. If when you're not speaking, you can muted if okay. But show of hands, who has used a glitter jar or a mindfulness jar in their teaching? Yeah, so we've all used them. Just one thing to think about is how we frame it. I really liked how I took a training with Jennifer Cohen Harper, who's the founder of Little Flower Yoga, and I liked her training when she explained, she used to call it the swirly whirly thought jar. And so what she said is, you know, our body is the container, our body and our mind. We're holding in all of our energy, the sparkles, the glitter, right? That's what we're thinking, what we're feeling. And sometimes if we're agitated, if we're having strong feelings, whether it's positive or negative, right? They're all swirling around. I'm so excited I have a play date. I'm so excited. Or, oh, I'm so stressed. I have to teach from home. I'm so stressed. Whatever it is, that circling and looping around in our minds and bodies, that energy. But when we let it settle down, when we sit and watch it settle, we too can feel settled down. And so that's why I don't put any oil in my jar. I like the glitter to be able to clear to the bottom and leave the water clear. So we're feeling that settled clarity. And kids love to make these. They feel like they can take ownership when you make them. So I get glitter glue on Amazon for $12 for 4 different colors. I get a few glitters. I have everybody bring in a recycled water bottle, and I do this with them, and then they have their own. So like Lisa, in your classroom, they could have their own area for it when you go back. Catherine, at home, you could have these. And like we like have these out in my bedroom at home. You can make them in beautiful glass jars if you want to have a beautiful one. I always just use something that if it broke, I wouldn't be sad about it, because I have a little kid and work with little kids. And it's one of those things that truly works with kids of every age, from like 2 and up. Ava, did you get a chance to do these over the summer with your camp?
I didn't make it, but they like played with it, because I did like a circuit, kind of like we did. Like they would go in a circle and do the different poses, and they ended with that one in the breathe ball.
Cool.
Played with it, but they didn't make it.
Yeah, but they would sit and watch it settle.
Yeah.
So sometimes I'll put a large one in the center of the room and have everyone sit crisscross applesauce, or they can lay on their bellies in Sphinx pose or in Cobra, or even just like this and watch it settle down. Things to look out for. They really do like to get close to it, which is why I like each kid to have their own if it's little kids. And if it's bigger kids, just letting them know what the physical boundary, how close you're allowed to get is. That way we don't have a lot of crowding. Okay. Net of hearing. There's different variations of this. Little Flower has a variation of this where you're catching sounds far away to closer. I'm sure Lisa Flynn probably has a variation of this where you're hearing things from far away and then closer. I'm not totally sure. I got this one from my colleague Nicole, who was the first grade teacher I told you about. So the visual is that you take a big net and you cast it out, and you're catching the sounds far away, and you're drawing the attention in and in and in and in until it finally lands within your own experience. So when you're working with little kids and they're imagining the sounds very far away, they sometimes hear like rocket ships and stuff like that. This is one of those activities where when you first introduce it, you can only do like 1 or 2 times. You might say like, what do you hear in the school? And then what do you hear in the classroom? But with more practice, you can practice more and more. So you might be able to do 5 or 6 different nets that you catch sounds in. Basically, the amount that kids need to be able to reflect out loud to this is more than most activities, because they're going to want to say, I heard the construction vehicles. And so just knowing that this activity does require some out loud reflection, and that almost everybody will want to share. So it can be good to end this with a turn and talk, or with a color what you heard activity, if you have too big of a group to hear everyone share something they heard. So this is another one we'll take a moment to experience. So what I'll have you do is find your mindful seat, crisscross applesauce, or sitting in the chair, and I'm going to guide you through the net of hearing. It'll take about 2 minutes. And if you'd like to close your eyes, you can. Otherwise, you can let your eyes look down the bridge of your nose. It's helpful to close your eyes because you can focus more on the sounds. And you're going to cast your net of hearing as far away as you can. Listen to the sounds in your neighborhood. Now cast your net of hearing a little bit closer. Listen to the sounds that are in your house and your yard and your driveway. Next, bring your net of hearing and catch the sounds just inside your home. Now catch the sounds inside the room you're in. And now catch the sounds. Bring your net of hearing a little closer. Catch the sounds in your own body. And take a moment to notice how you feel. And when you're ready, you can slowly open your eyes. What are some of the things you noticed you could hear? What did you notice far away from you?
I was listening to noises outside in the neighborhood, like cars going by or sirens or the wind. I could even hear that, I think, from. So I think just things that you just really don't pay attention to sometimes.
What did you notice? Was there anything that surprised you? Any sounds that you noticed that were surprising?
The clock. I never realized how many clocks we have, and I can hear them all ticking, and I never realized that before. Do you hear it too? Yeah.
Catherine?
First, I want to apologize about my children. I wish I unmuted. I did not really until you remind me.
We couldn't hear them until I asked you to. It was totally fine.
So most of the time I heard is they're yelling at each other. They're loud sounds. They're with my mother-in-law right now. I think my mother-in-law is really tired and stressed, I guess, because they were out. I heard all the sounds, but I try to be mindful, bring back my attention by my breath. But yeah, it's a good experience.
So I want to say something about what Lisa said, how she could hear things that she doesn't normally hear. And I want to remind you that some students, especially with different sensory experiences, like ultra sensitive sensory processing kids, hear everything. The heater, the swing that's 10 blocks away, they are hearing all of those things that we're tuning out very strongly. And to grow our compassion for kids that have auditory distraction. And in practices like this, where we go from out to in, we're not just helping them, we're helping everyone draw their attention in. That's why we don't start in and go out, because that's a very, the feeling of that is much less grounding and much more like wide open. So I tend to go from out to in. Try to have them notice their inner experience. What sounds the body makes. A lot of times kids will say, I heard my stomach grumbling, and then they realize I'm hungry. Or
Laura, can you say a little bit more about the out sound, like use imagination? Some people could, use your,
So when I'll say, like I've said, I've gone to classrooms and I've said, cast your net of hearing and catch the sounds that are as far away as you can. And I'll have kids say that they heard a rocket ship, or that they could hear Buzz Lightyear. And because my daughter right now is so imaginative, she's constantly projecting her own worlds out and creating worlds. So young kids' imaginations are so free until we crush them with normal schooling that they imagine that sound and they couple it with something. They might not have as much concrete real world experience, so they're hearing a crash and they're like, that's the moon, someone just landed on the moon. So it's really interesting to hear the interpretation they make through their imaginative world. We can gain a lot of insight about what they're interested in and thinking about from that.
Thank you.
When we do this with adults, one of the jobs we give the grown-up is to notice the sound, but not attach a label like, oh, that's the sound of laughter. Just here's a sound beginning and ending, which is a very difficult thing to do, is to not label the sound as what it is. And it's not concrete enough for children. So the children require something much more concrete. So just listen to what you hear and then tell us about what you heard. Whereas with adults, when I've been led through this meditation, I've been asked, try not to think about the thing you're hearing, but just notice when the sounds begin and end and where they're originating from. So that's kind of a more of an abstract and challenging skill set, but to actually listen and just hear it with more of a concrete instruction is really how we can frame this for children. Kids that don't like shutting their eyes get a little bit less from this, because when we have our eyes open, it takes a lot of our energy in. I once read that, I don't know if this is true and I can't remember where I saw this, but that 80% of our mental energy can be taken up with the things we're seeing. So when we close our eyes, our energy can be redispersed. So we can pay more attention through our other senses. So this is the mindful listening. It's a little bit different than what you were telling us about, Lisa. What you were talking about is just paying attention in the present moment. But the mindful listening activity that I do is important because when we think about our relationship with our students, it's so infrequent that they just get to say what they're thinking and be heard. Throughout a day, unless it's an only child, like my daughter gets a lot of this, she's really lucky. Most kids don't really get to just express what they think uninterrupted. As adults, our frustration is different. We have conversation, but there's not necessarily somebody in the role of listener who isn't trying to influence what we're saying or also talk. So when someone is just listening and they're not trying to respond or give you feedback like what you're saying is good or bad, they're just listening, the person speaking truly has an opportunity to express themselves. This is not a good way to communicate all the time, because when we're listening in a normal conversation, we show signs of listening with our bobbing head and our smile or our frown, our faces. But the practice of mindful listening, we actually try to sit with our eyes open and our face expressionless. I am not good at this in terms of like, I'm still bobblehead, but just to try to do less of the socially programmed I'm listening and more of the truly present listening. So we take turns in these different roles. And I generally cue a prompt. So like if I'm talking to my spouse, we might just say, let's think about this, and then each of us will get 3 minutes to respond. When I'm doing this with teachers that I work with, I'm trying to get them to feel empowered. So I might get them to think about the skills they have to prepare for something and then their plan, right? So one will speak, the other will listen, then they'll switch. So this is an activity that takes a lot of mindful awareness, because as a listener, you're going to want to say, I agree with you, or I have a story to tell that's related to that. In our lives, like in relationships, having opportunities to do mindful listening should require permission and consent, because it's not fair to just, you listen right now, I want to tell you this. It's like, can I talk to you about something and will you just listen? So these are things we can actually consciously ask for. And then I'm happy to also be an ear for you if you would like to just speak. In my trainings, a lot of people say this is so cathartic to just be listened to, but it's also awkward to not be responded to. So if you can find an opportunity after the workshop to do this, and then imagining how can we do this with kids? And I will just say the meet and greet activity where you can say, tell somebody something you did this summer, you know, and just start with something light with the kids. They can take a turn at speaking and listening, and you can deepen it with time. Any questions or experience with this, or ideas about how you'll use this? Because it's kind of hard to do this over the internet. So if we were in the same room, I would lead this, but it's just a bit tough. What I would normally do is I would ring the bell. I would give a prompt, I'd ring the bell, and then the person whose turn to speak would speak. And then I would ring the bell, you take a breath together, and then you switch. Questions about this? Ava, did you ever do this again after the training?
No.
Your mom should try it later.
I did one, it's similar to this, and it was through Breathe for Change.
Okay.
And they had you, and it was like, I want to say about 8 minutes. And you had to you walked around the school with the other person, and you just spoke the whole time, and the other person couldn't say anything back. And there was no expression. And then at a certain time, she did a chime, and we came back, and the other person said back, this is what I hear you saying.
Cool.
And so like that was my only experience, but I've never really done it with young children. But the way you're explaining it, I think I could do that. Like I never really thought of doing it with the younger kids.
It's nice to do with children. It's also just nice to have the experience of being listened to and of having that container of like, this is my role, this is your role when we're having conversations, because it gives it's more respectful. There's a little bit more reverence, and there's it's almost like more of a ceremony than just a regular conversation where anything goes. And I think that it's a mindful practice, and it makes relationships better, but not when it's the only way. It's something you can add into adult, mature relationships to make them better too. Like with your co-teachers or with your spouse or with even friends. Like this is a lot of my like social circles are also conscious, like whatever, like whether they're mindfulness practitioners or something. A lot of us are doing this in our social circles too. And I'm finding that it has application beyond our classroom.
Mm-hmm.
Catherine, did you ever try this after the training with anyone?
Yeah.
How has that been for you?
I agree with you that the hard part is the during the the practice. Of course, the teacher tell us, "Oh, try to show less facial expression and body language, extra." But I found that is the hard part for me too, because I tend to I don't know, when I resonate with someone and I try to not really on purpose show my support or agreement. I just, I don't know, for me is I tend to use my body language when I usually talk, but I find that it's really hard when I do the mindful practice. And also, as Lisa said, do the like 8 minutes or the number minutes back, like to tell the person what you heard, and also as a part of the practice too. That's also helpful for me to truly listen to that person.
Yeah, I like that. That gives that's actually a lot of, I've trained a lot of therapists and counselors, and that's one of the practices is like, I'm hearing you say, so like that person knows if they're understood or not.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a nice adaptation to this activity that I can consider including in the future. A lot of people who've done this, like how I've trained, work in the mental health field. So for them, nodding and making noises is in their it's beyond just their socialization, it's in their clinical training. So it's very fun to do this with them and to break down the automatic ways we are, because we automatically use our body language to show approval or disapproval, and just to recognize our own automaticness. It doesn't mean you can't do that in conversation, but just what am I possibly swaying? How am I maybe changing what they would have said with my approval or disapproval that is coming through my face, rather than just providing a loving, open, listening container for this person. Okay, thank you. 4-7-8 breathing. This is not really one I do with kids as much because breath retention is not great, but this is one of those ones that has like the science behind it, that holding your breath and exhaling slowly increases the parasympathetic response, or the amount of time that you're actually in this healing state, where your access to your frontal cortex is there, and you're able to have sort of a present experience where you're not in that fight or flight, that sympathetic response. Has anybody tried 4-7-8 breathing?
I've tried it this year actually with the older kids.
How did that go?
Very great. It's hard. I think it's a hard one for them. I usually don't do it, but I thought I'd try it this year to introduce different breaths. But it's hard holding it and then releasing that long.
Yeah, this is one that I would recommend for you, for your personal practice, and less to share with the kids. But breath.
What I did do, because I realized with the first group it was kind of hard, I found a clip that was from like Go Zen or one of them, and when he did it and explained it going up and down, I could see them following along more and trying to hold it and breathe out longer.
There's a lot of really cool animated like shape things.
Yeah, but that was my first attempt.
Yeah, I tend to do really quick holds for kids, but if I notice the capacity for breathing in is increasing, and that they feel comfortable holding for a moment, I taught this to my seniors in high school. I've taught this to middle schoolers. They really couldn't make it through the 7 and 8, but that's just because of a lack of practice. And it's safe to do some breath retention when you're getting a little bit older, but because of the way children regulate their temperature, it's really not great when they're very young. So this is something we can, like, it seems like you introduced it with older kids. That was a great instinct. Okay, well, I'm going to recommend you do this one on your own, in your own practice, just to see what is the experience I have with 478 breathing. The mindful walk. So in your handout, there's also there's a very simple illustration. What did I just do with my copy? It's just like a chart with what do you see, what do you smell, what do you hear on your mindful walk. It's in here somewhere. Anyways, I promise it's in there. And it's a nice thing if you can actually get outside and spend some time in nature. I'm not sure which page is on. Anywho, the experience of a mindful walk is something that can be done in so many different ways. It's what you're paying attention to. So for me, if I have like access to nature, I'm often just having them listen or look for things that are occurring in nature. But if I'm stuck in a building, I might have them focus more on the way they're walking or to walk in a certain way. And so that's how I do this differently. Lisa, are you already doing mindful walks with your classes?
I usually do in the spring.
Yeah.
The spring to the end of the year, we would go outside and we take a walk around the whole school. And then depending on what kind of day, if we have the chance to look up at clouds, like sit on the ground and look up at the clouds, we do that activity too. But yeah, they like this one. I never thought of doing it throughout the seasons though.
Yeah, so I have like on my blog, there's one specifically for autumn, but like there's basically just like taking in. So I take walks every day because I live in New York City. You have to walk everywhere, even if you take the train. So I've found that for my own commute, like just paying attention to what is the same and different from day to day can keep me actually present and out of like, what am I doing next? And the whole like mental loop. And with students, they really like, I work in one of the buildings I work in has 6 stories and no elevator. And so sometimes we'll be hunting for like bottles in the recycling bins or something. So we'll do that in a certain way to get everybody, well, first of all, I don't want them like running through the halls. So to get everybody kind of in a meditative state where we're walking in a certain way, like pretend your feet are very heavy, just to focus on how we're walking. I find it's really, it takes the mundane and makes it feel special to them and when we arrive, it feels like we're arriving in presence. Anybody want to ask anything or add anything? Okay. Breath of Joy, we did this one. So this is an eye game. Actually the illustrator made this one up, but I really like it. There's a lot more instructions in your booklet, but basically one of the issues people have, I think, is intimacy and like how do we have small amounts of it? Like have you ever noticed like with certain students, they'll catch your eye contact and then their eyes will run away. Like they're like, we made eye contact. So this game is a game where you specifically have like maybe 10 seconds where you can look at one person's eyes and just notice things about them, the shape of their eye or the color of their eye or what the color of their eye reminds you of. Now I will say like some kids with different neurodiversity might hate this game and so this wouldn't be for everyone and you wouldn't want this to go on for too long. But just taking a moment, and I didn't even know, like like I said, I read the subway a lot, so I'm constantly averting eyes, like purposefully not making eye contact. So I noticed that's something I'm doing. I'm closing myself off to connection. Is that a conscious choice? So sometimes just have a moment where you can make eye contact with somebody on purpose, but you know it's a game. It's a mindful game. You could even let them color their person's eyes after. So this would be one I would recommend if you have a lot of trust and rapport in your group and you think that people would be able to respond positively to this activity. Yeah, and it could be a great segue into art or journaling. But do you think any of you would be willing to try this with your students?
Yeah, I could definitely try that.
I don't know whether Lara, I think Lisa's kids are older. I have a book, we're the same, we're different. I think we're different, we're the same, sort of. Like they talk about five senses. They talk up when we talk when the book talk about the eye, it's just, you know, our eyes. Basically the functions are the same, but you know, the shapes, as what you said, the color, the size, they're different. So I use that for the preschoolers. They like that because they can see and they look around for their peers. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like a great age appropriate way to do that with like the younger kid, like with a 3 or 4-year-old. Whereas like with a 7-year-old, you could definitely have them take a moment and like glance at each other's eyes. And there are like eye gazing meditations that are part of some meditative lineages. And those are things that are kind of more high skill and high intimacy. So I wouldn't recommend something like that, which is why framing it through a game tends to be how I would do something like this. The last one is the loving kindness meditation. It sounds like a lot of people have heard of these or do these. Catherine does this in her self-practice, and Lisa's been doing this with her students. I simply took a really short one that I do, and on the slide it's much shorter. There's a long one in your handout that has, it starts with compassion to the self, like may I be well, may I be healthy and strong, may I be happy. And then you think of someone that you love and care about. Then you think of somebody you feel neutral about. Then you think of somebody that you don't know. And then maybe somebody that you have had a hard time with. And so you're giving out love and compassion to all these different types. And then there's some where you can send it to the whole world. Oops. So what I would say is for a loving kindness meditation, it's more important to start with inward like self-compassion, and to start with the self for this, and to maybe expand to just simply somebody that they can think of that they love. And when that is easy and when that is something that they can do naturally, you can expand it to these other subsets of people. There are some pre-recorded audio ones that are pretty nice for this. But like I said, I do like to do this in my own voice. And when I do this, I have them lie down or sit down, and I say it, and then I let them mentally repeat it or whisper it. And sometimes they have to speak it out loud. If they're like if they're Ellie's age, she would probably just say it too. She would probably say it the same way I said it. So I like to do this when they're in a receptive and relaxed place. This is usually like a closing meditation. Before we transition out, this is like a way to bring up the compassion and the self-compassion and the empathy. And there's a reason that the loving kindness meditation is so popular. But we really need pathways to caring and pathways to love. And if you're just doing distance education right now, this could be such a beautiful practice to provide from a distance, having them send love to themselves and to people that are far away that they would normally get to hold and hug and love and be next to. Their friends that they don't get to have lunch with now. That our students are out of their norm, they're missing out on things that are important to them, and they're missing people that are important to them. So this could be a way for them to imagine loving connection with all those people they're missing. So if you're doing these distance education sessions, I like could not recommend this more highly. Any questions or comments? So before, we just have a few minutes, 4 minutes, so I promise not to go over. I just wanted to remind you that if you're a person that likes planning, there's release of responsibility planners. There's mindfulness class planners. And then thinking about your own practice, you can jot it down or journal about it. I think the best time to sit and create a plan for yourself is usually right after you finish something. So before we close, I just wanted to recommend, when we wrap up now, spend a couple minutes and just kind of write down a few ideas or what your initial plan might be to work on your daily practice for yourself. And then maybe some things you're hoping to share with students and things that really resonated and jumped out at you. Before we close, I just want to thank you so much for being here. I think that this work is so important right now, and we're so far apart from each other. To connect inwardly and outwardly is such an important skill, and I'm so grateful for all of you in this work that you're doing with kids, and with yourselves.
Well, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
So welcome. So let's just close, find a comfortable seat. We'll take a breath as we hear the sound of the chime. Give yourself a big hug. You might think or say, "Thank you, body." Before you wrap up, I invite you to do the 5-breath space maker when you're kind of cleaning up your space, if you're going to sit and journal or whatever you're going to do, and then close out this activity consciously. I'd like, again, just to say thank you so much. I'll be sending out an email with the recording for this once it's gone through. And it'd be so great, and I would appreciate it so much if you could send any feedback you have or testimonial, either written or a video. Would be, Ava's already sent me videos, so either Lisa or Catherine to just say what you got from this, because like I said, I am starting to make headway, but every little bit helps. I'm hoping that this will get shared more widely. So thank you so much, and please find your mindful way out of this meeting with a mindful transition, either one I taught you or one you know, and have a beautiful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Laura. Thank you.
So welcome.